Chapter 28:18. The Anomaly. Elder Gu was completely stunned. This was normal because he had indeed seen something impossible. This was completely against the common sense of the heavenly axiom and was unreasonable. But it had indeed happened. After Jian Wushuang's real soul recovered in the boundless dark void, he continued to resist the soul attack. At this moment, a faint smile appeared on Jian Wushuang's face. I heard from Elder Gu that this test is aimed at the soul. So I knew that I could pass this test. Now, it seems that it's not very likely, but I can definitely pass it, Jian Wushuang muttered. The test aimed at the soul. To put it bluntly, he had to find a way to resist the soul attack that had always existed. The soul attack was indeed potent and was getting stronger. It was almost impossible for a divine master, even an invincible divine master, to pass the test. However, it was not difficult for Jian Wushuang. Yes, he could not resist the soul attack forever. But he did not need to resist it. Even if the soul attack destroyed his physical soul, he could rely on his divine power to recover it completely in the next moment. Then, he could continue to rely on his physical soul to block it. After repeating this process, to him, it was nothing more than the consumption of divine power. However, his divine power was vast and boundless. The divine power used to recover his physical soul was nothing compared to his vast divine power. Let alone recovering once or twice. Even if he recovered dozens of times, it was nothing to him. He only needed to stay in this space for 6 hours, and he could easily survive it. Although the soul impact can't do anything to me, it does suppress my soul. So it's just right to temper my soul strength. Jian Wushuang smiled and began to use the soul impact. He continued to temper his soul strength. Time continued to pass. Jian Wushuang's real soul was destroyed for the second time, but he immediately recovered and resisted the soul impact. Recovered again? Elder Gu, outside the void, saw this scene and his expression was exciting. Monster, this kid is definitely a monster. No, he can't be called a monster. No matter how powerful a monster is, it is still within the common sense of the heavenly axiom. However, this kid has completely defied the common sense of the heavenly axiom. Therefore, he can't be described as a monster. He should be called an outlier. Yes, it's an outlier of the heavenly axiom. It's filled with the heavenly axiom. Therefore it shouldn't exist. Elder Gu roared, his voice hoarse. In the dark void, Jian Wushuang's real soul was destroyed twice, thrice, and then restored. After 6 hours, Jian Wushuang's soul had been destroyed 7 times. He also recovered 7 times. Finally, after 6 hours, the continuous soul impact in the surroundings completely dissipated. Is it over? Jian Wushuang stood in the dark void and felt the retreat of the surrounding spacetime impact, but he felt a little regretful. He actually wanted to stay under the soul impact for a while longer. Anyway, the soul impact could not do anything to him. Instead, it gave him soul power, which had a great tempering effect. In these 6 hours, he clearly felt that his soul strength had increased a lot. Unfortunately, now that the test was over, the soul impact was gone. But the void slightly twisted, and a space passage appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Along the space passage, Jian Wushuang appeared in the cemetery again in front of Elder Gu. Seeing Elder Gu again, Jian Wushuang found that Elder Gu's expression was quite interesting. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang was not surprised. He knew that Elder Gu should have seen his performance in the dark void just now. Although, naturally, he also saw his physical soul being destroyed again and again, which was against the common sense of heaven. It would be strange if Elder Gu were not surprised. Suhan, I'm more and more curious about what kind of big secret you have. Elder Gu stared at Jian Wushuang with a bright light in his eyes. I do have a secret, but even if you know it, it won't be of any use to you or even your master. On the contrary, it might even bring disaster. Believe me. I'm not lying, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. Elder Gu looked at Jian Wushuang deeply, but he did not deny it. He knew that if Jian Wushuang could do such a thing that went against the laws of nature, he must have a world-shaking secret. Even if his master were still alive, let alone the spirit of the secret realm, even a rule master would not be able to come into contact with such a secret. Such a big secret must have involved the highest level of the divine beginning world. Those who were qualified to participate must be super experts at the level of Saint Realm Masters. No wonder you dared to take this test before. It turns out that you have a lot of confidence in yourself, Elder Gu said. Jian Wushuang smiled and did not comment. If it were anyone else, they would have given up when they heard Elder Gu's kind advice and knew that the test was so difficult and that there was a high chance of them dying. However, Jian Wushuang was different. He was too confident in his ability. As a perfect chaotic creature with a perfect immortal body, it was not easy to kill him? Not to mention that it was only a test left by a rule master. Even if the rule master who created this secret realm were still alive and standing in front of Jian Wushuang, he would not be able to kill Jian Wushuang. At most he could suppress him while he was still alive. Because of this, Jian Wushuang was not afraid at all. Because he knew that he would not die in this test. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. Elder Gu waved his hand. You survived for 6 hours in that space. Although you used an unusual method, you did pass the test. Therefore, according to the agreement, I can give you some of the corpse puppets in this secret realm. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up immediately. Thank you, Elder Gu. Wait here for a while. Then I'll go and prepare them for you, Elder Gu said, but his figure disappeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was not in a hurry. He just waited here quietly. Chapter 28:19. Corpse Puppet Army. Not long after, Elder Gu appeared in front of Jian Wushuang again. I've checked carefully. There are only a few corpse puppets left in the secret realm, except for those who must stay in the secret realm to stop the cultivators, Elder Gu said. Not many? How many? Jian Wushuang asked. I tried my best to select 100 corpse puppets for you. I don't know if I can help you, Elder Gu said. 100. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up. Look. Elder Gu waved his hand and streams of flowing light shot out. They appeared in the surrounding void and condensed into ice-cold figures. These figures were all dead. There were a total of 100 corpse puppets standing in the surrounding void. Jian Wushuang immediately looked around. These corpse puppets were no different from the ones Jian Wushuang had seen before. They were all copper-armored, silver-armored, and gold-armored corpse puppets. More than half of the copper-armored corpse puppets had the battle strength of an ordinary advanced divine master. There were more than 60 copper-armored corpse puppets in the surrounding 100 corpse puppets. There were 30 silver-armored corpse puppets with the battle strength of an advanced divine master. The remaining 10 were gold-armored corpse puppets. 10 gold-armored corpse puppets, 30 silver-armored corpse puppets, and 60 bronze-armored corpse puppets. Jian Wushuang was extremely excited. 100 corpse puppets meant 100 great divine masters' battle strength. The weakest among them was an advanced great divine master, and there were 10 gold-armored corpse puppets, which was the battle strength of a peak great divine master. All of them added together, this was a powerful corpse puppet army. Yes, it was a corpse puppet army. There are 200 great divine masters in the Heaven Void Temple's army of 2,000 people. However, their strength is uneven. I'm afraid that many of them are elementary great divine masters, and there are definitely a few advanced great divine masters. As for peak great divine masters, there must be even fewer. This time, only half of the Heavenly Void Palace army, or 100 great divine masters, gathered under the orders of the master of the Heavenly Void Palace. The corpse puppet army standing in front of me now also has 100 great divine masters. Their numbers are equal, but in terms of quality, the corpse puppet army clearly has the absolute advantage. With the corpse puppet army in hand and the strength of Crimson Rock Castle and our Sword Alliance, our camp will definitely have the absolute advantage if we fight against the Heavenly Void Army now. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands, but he was pleasantly surprised. At this time, Elder Gu looked at him again and asked, Su-Han, are you satisfied with the 100 corpse puppets? Yes, very satisfied. Jian Wushuang nodded and said, in fact, these corpse puppets are nothing. They are just small things that Master refined when he was alive. Master could refine saint-level corpse puppets when he was alive, but unfortunately, there are not many of them left in this secret realm. I can't give you saint-level corpse puppets, but I have one corpse puppet with me so I can give it to you, Elder Gu said. There's another one? Jian Wushuang looked at Elder Gu in surprise. Elder Gu smiled mysteriously and waved his hand again. In an instant, a streak of blood-red light shot out. In front of Jian Wushuang, a corpse puppet in blood-red armor with skin that looked like it was made of blood appeared. This corpse puppet was also lifeless. Since it had not attacked, Jian Wushuang could not immediately determine its strength. Elder Gu, what is this? Jian Wushuang could only ask. It's above the golden-armored corpse puppet. The blood-armored corpse puppet is also a corpse puppet at the Divine Master level. However, among Divine Masters, the blood-armored corpse puppet is invincible. Elder Gu said. Invincible among Divine Masters? Invincible Divine Master? Jian Wushuang was shocked. Yes. According to the realm of the primordial divine world, his battle strength is comparable to that of the extremely rare invincible divine master, Elder Gu said with a smile. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang was overjoyed. With the army of corpse puppets formed by 100 corpse puppets, he was confident that he could fight against the Heaven Void army. The only problem was the invincible divine master of the Marquis of 3. He had been unable to find a way to fight against Marquis 3, but now Elder Gu had given him a higher-level blood-armored corpse puppet that was comparable to the invincible divine master. How could he not be surprised? "Thank you, Elder Gu." Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and thanked Elder Gu immediately. "You're welcome. You deserve all the tests that your master left for you, and they're just some corpse puppets. They're nothing to the numerous opportunities in this secret realm," Elder Gu said with a faint smile, but then he continued to look at Jian Wushuang. "Suhan, I can give you another treasure in addition to these corpse puppets. That treasure should be of great use to you, but you have to agree to one condition." Jian Wushuang was stunned and looked at him subconsciously. "What's the treasure that's of great use to me? I can show it to you first." Elder Gu smiled, but with a flip of his hand, a dark green jade bottle appeared in his hand. He opened the cork of the bottle and immediately a green elixir the size of an adult thumb appeared in Elder Gu's hand. "This is an elixir?" Jian Wushuang's expression changed as he stared at the green elixir. He did not know this elixir, but since it was made by Elder Gu, it was definitely not an ordinary item. However, Jian Wushuang did not know what effect it could have on him. "Have you heard of the Saint Ascension elixir?" Elder Gu looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile. "Saint Ascension elixir?" Jian Wushuang was stunned and subconsciously shook his head. He had never studied alchemy. All he knew was some widely known elixirs in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. As for this Saint Ascension elixir, he had never heard of it. "It's normal that you don't know. This Saint Ascension elixir is located in the center of the absolute beginning divine realm. It's quite famous in the third sky of your realm. However, outside the third sky, in this remote territory of yours, this Saint Ascension elixir should only belong to the legends. Naturally, not many people know about it." Elder Gu smiled faintly. "It doesn't matter if you haven't heard about it. I can tell you about its effects now." Jian Wushuang listened carefully. As its name suggests, the Saint Ascension elixir is an elixir that leads to the path of a saint. Its effects are actually similar to the royal gold core of a divine master. The royal gold core can help a divine master break through to become a great divine master, and it can help a great divine master break through his own realm. The Saint Ascension elixir can help a peak great divine master who has been stuck at a bottleneck for a long time break through to the level of an immortal saint. Just as Elder Gu said this, Jian Wushuang's eyes widened. Help a peak great divine master break through to the immortal saint level? That was the immortal saint level. Chapter 28:20, Saint Ascension Elixir, what's the chance? Jian Wushuang immediately asked. 10%, Elder Gu said. Of course, for those ordinary divine masters who are unprepared, they still have a 10% chance of breaking through to the immortal saint level after taking the Saint Ascension Elixir. But for those powerful divine masters who are well prepared and have great potential, there's at least a 30% chance of breaking through to the immortal saint level after taking the Saint Ascension Elixir. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was even more shocked. Without any preparation, there was a 10% chance of a breakthrough. With sufficient preparation, there was a 30% chance of a breakthrough? A 30% chance. After all, the Aurus core of the royal realm could make a senior great divine master breakthrough to be a peak great divine master, which was also very small. Even so, it was enough to make many great divine masters fight for it and even kill each other. For example, Elder Tong and Ba Xiong, who had been killed by Jian Wushuang, had directly broken through to be a peak great divine master by taking a gold core of the royal realm. A gold core of the royal realm was worth at least 100 times or even 1,000 times more than just normal cultivation. Jian Wushuang had no doubt that once the news of the gold core of the royal realm spread, the entire Pill Sun sacred world and even the entire Golden Crow 9 realms would be shocked. Countless great divine masters and top experts would fight for the elixir at all costs. Even an invincible divine master like the Marquis of 3 would not be able to resist the temptation of the elixir, let alone a peak great divine master. After all, it was too difficult for an ordinary peak great divine master to break through to become an immortal saint. Take the Pill Sun sacred world as an example. The vast sacred world had an incomparably vast territory, but after so many years the Pill Sun sacred world had given birth to an undying sage, and that was the Crimson Rock Sage. However, there were quite a few experts at the great deity level in the Pill Sun sacred world. There were even some peak great deity level experts, but they were unable to truly break through to become an undying sage. However, it was difficult to break through to become an undying sage. And once an elixir with a 30% chance of breaking through was placed in front of these great divine masters, it would be strange if these great divine masters did not go crazy. Suhan, your talent is extremely high. Although you haven't reached the peak great divine master level yet, you'll reach it sooner or later. At that time you'll probably encounter a bottleneck. Even if you can break through, it'll definitely take a long time. And this sacred elixir will help you when the time comes. With your talent and skills, as long as you've accumulated enough divine power, you'll have at least a 50% chance of becoming an immortal saint with the help of the elixir. Elder Gu smiled. I can give you the pill now, but you have to agree to one condition. What condition? Jian Wushuang asked. It's simple. I want you to agree to it. To be exact, I want you to swear that if you break through to the immortal saint level, you will come to the secret realm and try your best to accept the test left by the master and get the mantle left by the master. How about that? Elder Gu said. That's the condition? Jian Wushuang was stunned. He had thought that Elder Gu would make such a harsh condition, but it turned out that he just wanted him to try his best to accept the test left by the master of the secret realm. In fact, even if Elder Gu did not say anything, Jian Wushuang would definitely come back to the secret realm after he broke through to become an immortal saint. After all, this secret realm was left by a powerful rule master and contained endless opportunities. Jian Wushuang also had a certain yearning for opportunities in this secret realm. I agree to this condition. I can swear it now. Jian Wushuang made an oath right in front of Elder Gu. Of course, this oath was not very binding for Jian Wushuang. Even if he broke it later, there would be no harm. However, given Jian Wushuang's character, since he made an oath, he would definitely do his best to fulfill it. Seeing Jian Wushuang make an oath, Elder Gu could not help but smile. Then he waved his hand and handed the Saint Ascension elixir directly to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang carefully put the Saint Ascension elixir into his interspatial ring, but he was delighted. Elder Gu was wrong. The Saint Ascension elixir had some effect on Jian Wushuang, but it was not very useful. He had no choice. He was a perfect chaotic creature, and every breakthrough in his realm was different from ordinary people. For other great divine masters, the gold core of the royal realm was the best elixir for breaking through their own realm, but it was of little use to Jian Wushuang. That was why he had not swallowed any of the 5 royal gold cores he had obtained in the secret realm. Instead, he had used them to recruit experts. If the royal gold core was like that, then the Saint Ascension elixir was the same. Jian Wushuang knew very well that even if he successfully reached the level of a peak great divine master and his divine power had reached the peak, he would not be able to break through with just a Saint Ascension elixir. The Saint Ascension elixir could at most help him or promote him. However, Jian Wushuang was still quite happy. After all, he did not need the Saint Ascension elixir, but others could. Moreover, Jian Wushuang already had a suitable candidate in his heart. Was Yin Suer. I promised St. Crimson Rock that I would try my best to help Yin Suer break through her realm and make her an immortal saint, but it's easier said than done. I can't really help her, but now I'm giving her the Saint Ascension elixir, which is the best way to help her. As for whether she can make a breakthrough to become an immortal saint, it depends on her own luck, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. Thank you, Elder Gu. Jian Wushuang thanked Elder Gu, then he refined the corpse puppets one by one, put them into his interspatial ring, and left the secret realm with the corpse puppet army. The second time he entered the secret realm, Jian Wushuang had gained a lot. He had obtained the corpse puppet army, a Saint Ascension elixir, and his soul power had also been tempered. With the corpse puppet army and the combined power of the Pill Sun Sacred World, I should be able to fight the Heavenly Void army head-on and even gain the upper hand. Moreover, with the existence of the blood-armored corpse puppet, I'm not afraid of the Marquis of 3 Yin. However, my own strength is still inferior. Since the Heavenly Void army hasn't arrived yet, I have to improve my strength as much as possible. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. There were only 2 ways for him to improve his strength. Chapter 28-21, The Hell Blood Divine Sword, a top-tier heavenly treasure. The first way was to improve his cultivation level. His current cultivation level was only at the peak divine venerate level. It was only because of the black stone in his body that the divine power aura he emitted increased by 2 levels, causing people to think that he was a high-level great divine master. In fact, he was still far from being a high-level great divine master. And once he took another step forward and broke through from a peak heavenly master to a low-level great divine master, it would definitely be a huge improvement for him. Just in terms of the strength of his divine power, it was a leap. At that time, when he used all his secret techniques, the strength of his divine power would be comparable to that of an invincible divine master like the Marquis of 3 Yin. It might even be slightly stronger. In addition, he had made his ultimate technique and comprehension of the rules. His understanding of the Tao had reached the limit of a divine master, so his battle strength must be at the level of an invincible divine master. Therefore, if he fought with the Marquis of Threein again, he would not be weaker than the Marquis of Threein, let alone have a high chance of winning. Unfortunately, he would not be able to see it in a short time. After all, it required a lot of divine power to break through from a peak divine master to an elementary great divine master. Although Jian Wushuang had absorbed more than 200,000 Saint Elixirs, he had only accumulated less than 2/3 of his divine power. Therefore, he estimated that he needed to absorb at least 150,000 Saint Elixirs before he could break through. However, under such circumstances he could not find so many Saint Elixirs. Naturally, he could not break through in a short time. As for the second path, Reincarnation Sword Formation, Jian Wushuang could not help narrowing his eyes. Jian Wushuang had already experienced how powerful the Reincarnation Sword Formation created by Sword Master Tongxin was. Moreover, he had used the second Reincarnation Sword Formation for a long time because the 9 Netherblood Divine Swords, which were the magic weapons that formed the Reincarnation Sword Formation, were too low level. They were only 9 standard magic weapons at the level of ordinary heavenly treasures, so they could not fully display the power of the Reincarnation Sword Formation. Therefore, the Reincarnation Sword Formation had not played a big role in the previous battles. In fact, Jian Wushuang knew that the power of the Sword Formation was awe-inspiring. Moreover, he had put all his efforts into spacetime swordsmanship and did not delve into Samsara swordsmanship. The Samsara sword formation purely reflected his comprehension of the Samsara rules. Only when the Samsara sword formation was combined with the spacetime swordsmanship that he created himself could he fully utilize his comprehension of the spacetime and Samsara rules. This was his peak battle strength. And now he urgently needed a stronger sword-type standard magic weapon. Starpoint Pavilion. Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with a bright light. Starpoint Pavilion was one of the super forces in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. It was extremely transcendent. It was publicly recognized as the #1 chamber of commerce in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. It had many branches in various realms, but it only dealt in business and never participated in the fights between the various realms. Previously, when Jian Wushuang dealt with the 230-pound Blood Wilderness Emperor Essence and the Battle Saber of the Holy Treasure level, he did not choose the Star Pavilion because the 2 treasures were too valuable. If he sold them to the Star Pavilion, he would not get the most benefits. However, if he wanted to buy some treasures, the Star Pavilion was the best choice. The Danyang continent was the core of the Danyang sacred world. Naturally, there were 3 branches of the Star Pavilion here. Jian Wushuang went directly to one of the branches. The deacon in the branch quickly recognized him, and then the branch manager came to pick him up personally. In a secret room. Master Sword 1, what can the Star Pavilion do for you? The purple-robed manager of the branch stood in front of Jian Wushuang with a humble smile and a hint of respect in his words and actions. This was normal. In the Pill Sun sacred world, everyone who had some knowledge knew Sword 1, the chief of the Sword Alliance. He was widely recognized as the #1 expert in the Pill Sun sacred world. The purple-robed supervisor was only an advanced divine master. Although he was from the Point Star Pavilion, the difference in strength still made him somewhat respectful of Jian Wushuang. I need a few standard divine weapons of sword type. The higher level ones should be at least superior divine treasures, Jian Wushuang said. Superior divine weapons of sword type? The purple-robed supervisor's expression changed. I've been using the Netherblood Divine Sword before, but it's only an ordinary divine treasure. So I wonder if there's a superior divine treasure level Netherblood Divine Sword in the Point Star Pavilion? Jian Wushuang asked. He had used the Netherblood Divine Sword when he used the Reincarnation Sword Formation. He was the most familiar with the use of the Netherblood Divine Sword. If possible, he would like to use the Netherblood Divine Sword to perform the Reincarnation Sword Formation at the level of a superior divine treasure. I do have a Netherblood Divine Sword at the level of a superior divine treasure in the Star Pavilion. However, the Netherblood Divine Sword is very famous among all the standard divine weapons of the sword category. Its power is also extreme, so its value is naturally higher, the purple-robed supervisor said. How much? Jian Wushuang asked. If it's a superior divine treasure level magic weapon, our Starpoint Pavilion will only sell it at the price of holy elixirs. So, for example, a superior divine treasure level Ming Shui divine family requires 500 holy elixirs. Can you accept this price, sir? The purple-robed supervisor said with a smile. 500 holy elixirs for one? Jian Wushuang frowned. As far as he knew, an ordinary superior divine treasure level offensive divine weapon only cost around 300 to 400 sacred elixirs. A standard divine weapon should have a lower value. However, the underworld blood divine sword was powerful, so it was exceptional among divine weapons of the same level. Therefore it was worth 500 sacred elixirs. 500 sacred elixirs is acceptable, Jianghu Shuang said. How many do you need, sir? The purple-robed supervisor looked at him with a smile. Jianghu Shuang pondered. He had only needed 9 Netherblood divine swords to form the reincarnation sword formation. But that was because he had only used the first and second sword formations. However, he needed 18 sword-type magic weapons from the third sword formation to form the sword formation. I've already controlled the second reincarnation sword formation long ago. Furthermore, with my current understanding of the laws of reincarnation, I can completely unleash the power of the second reincarnation sword formation. Next, I will naturally try to control the third sword formation. At that time, I will need a total of 18 divine swords. Other than that, just 18 is still a little too little. Previously, when I fought with Palace Master Nan Wu, 9 Netherblood divine swords were destroyed by him. This has reminded me. From now on, when I use the reincarnation sword formation to fight with others, if I clash head-on, the sword alliance will inevitably collapse due to the opponent's power. Furthermore, the divine swords that form the sword alliance might also be damaged. Therefore, I have to prepare a few more Netherblood divine swords. So it's better to be prepared. Chapter 28-22, the third level of the Samsara sword formation. Jianghu Shuang thought to himself and quickly made up his mind. Give me 20 Netherblood divine swords in the superior heavenly treasure level. This is 10,000 saint elixirs. Please count them. Jianghu Shuang took out an interspatial ring. Previously, when the 4 superior forces had submitted, Jianghu Shuang had obtained a large number of saint elixirs in one go. Including the ones that had killed Palace Master Nan Wu and the others, there were more than 200,000 saint elixirs. He had refined most of the saint elixirs, but he had kept some for himself. There were exactly 10,000 saint elixirs and he had used them all. Taking the interspatial ring, the purple-robed supervisor glanced at it and nodded slightly. Please wait for a moment, sir. I'll send you the underworld blood divine swords right away. The purple-robed supervisor went down to prepare. He appeared in front of Jianghu Shuang 2 hours later and handed him the interspatial ring containing 20 Netherblood divine swords of the superior divine treasure level. After confirming that there were no mistakes, Jianghu Shuang left the Point Star Pavilion directly. In the middle of a vast and boundless mountain range. There were all kinds of mountains standing in this mountain range. These mountains had yellow and dry hair. This was a desolate mountain range that was usually uninhabited. Jianghu Shuang was standing in the void in the middle of the mountain range. He slowly raised his hand. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. 9 black swords with endless reincarnation power appeared out of thin air and floated in front of him. Each of the 9 underworld blood divine swords was extremely powerful, even slightly stronger than ordinary superior heavenly treasures. The power of reincarnation contained in the swords was naturally stronger. Go! Jianghu Shuang said softly. The 9 underworld blood divine swords in front of him instantly turned into 9 streams of black light and shot out through the void. Their speed was the same, but when the 9 underworld blood divine swords pierced through the void, their power was much stronger than when Jianghu Shuang had only used ordinary divine treasures. Boom, boom, boom. Each stream of light pierced through the void with a shocking sound. Under Jianghu Shuang's control, the 9 Netherblood divine swords split into 9 different directions and attacked the 9 different mountains on the side. Bang, bang, bang. A total of 9 loud sounds rang out almost at the same time. The 9 mountains, which were originally lofty, were pierced through at the same time. As a result, a huge spiral-shaped hole was pierced through the center of the mountain, but the mountain did not collapse. As expected, I am the most familiar with the control of the underworld blood divine sword and the perfect control of power. The 9 underworld blood divine swords flew out at the same time, but not a trace of divine power leaked out. Jianghu Shuang smiled. Not only is the control of power the most perfect, but the power of the underworld blood divine sword is also much stronger than before. I'm not using any secret techniques right now. I'm just relying on my own divine power and my comprehension of the laws of reincarnation to drive the 9 Netherblood divine swords with all my might. Any one of them would be as powerful as an attack from a high-level great deity. If I were to go all out and use all my secret techniques and trump cards to control the 9 Netherblood divine swords, I'm afraid that any one of them would have the power of a peak great deity. By then, the 9 Netherblood Divine Swords will be equivalent to 9 Divine Masters at the peak. In addition, I haven't really used the sword formation yet. Jian Wushuang smiled and moved his mind. 9 swords in one, all things sync. Bus. The 9 Netherblood Divine Swords that were originally scattered were completely combined in the blink of an eye. In an instant, a huge black tree that was emitting a shocking power immediately formed. It was also a huge black tree, but the moment this huge black tree appeared, it was surrounded by many mysterious reincarnation vortexes. The power it carried was far from what it could compare to in the past. Bang! The huge black tree suddenly struck out, directly striking the largest mountain in front of it. The giant mountain was instantly pierced through by the impact of the giant black tree. Under the violent impact, the entire mountain immediately collapsed. This power is at least 10 times stronger than when I used 9 ordinary divine treasures, the Underworld Blood Divine Sword. Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with a bright light. This was normal. Ordinary divine treasures were 2 levels weaker than superior divine treasures, so the difference in power was shocking. When I fought Palace Master Nan Wu, I tried my best to use the 2nd level of the Samsara sword formation, but he easily defeated me. Now, with the same level of divine power, I should be able to suppress him with this sword formation, Jian Wushuang muttered. Moreover, this was only the 2nd level of the sword formation. With Jian Wushuang's current understanding of the Samsara rule, he could try to master the 3rd level of the sword formation. Although the Heaven Void Palace Master has given the order, it will take some time for the Heaven Void army to gather and rush from the Heaven Void world to the territory of the Pil Sun's sacred world. During this time, I can try my best to master the 3rd level of the Samsara sword formation. Jian Wushuang made up his mind. Immediately, he began to practice the 3rd reincarnation sword formation in this desolate mountain range. The 3rd reincarnation sword formation was called Reincarnation Drunk. Under normal circumstances, one could only fully control this move when one's comprehension of the reincarnation rule reached the limit of a divine master. However, Jian Wushuang was very close to this level now, so he could try to achieve this step in the process of mastering the exercise. Let's begin. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang raised his hand again. Another 9 Netherblood Divine Swords flew out. So, including the previous 9, there were a total of 18. The 18 Netherblood Divine Swords were the basic conditions for forming the 3rd reincarnation sword formation. Condense. As Jian Wushuang pointed from afar, the 18 Netherblood Divine Swords instantly began to condense in the void in front of him. The 18 Underworld Blood Divine Swords condensed at a very fast speed. In the blink of an eye, a brand new black divine sword was about to be formed. But at the last moment, with a bang, the many divine swords scattered. Did I fail? Jian Wushuang looked at this scene, but he was not discouraged at all. He knew very well that it would take time for him to truly control the 3rd sword formation. It was impossible for him to succeed in the first attempt. Continue. Jian Wushuang regrouped and soon began the 2nd attempt. Bang. The sword formation collapsed for the 2nd time. Bang. 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 The 3rd, 4th, 5th time. Jian Wushuang kept trying. He failed again and again, summarizing his experience and the unique laws contained in the sword formation. But, most importantly, while he was practicing, he was also comprehending the reincarnation rules. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, 1 year and 4 months had passed. Chapter 28-23 had arrived. It was still in the center of the desolate mountain range. A total of 18 Underworld Blood Divine Swords, each of which carried the vast power of the reincarnation rule, gathered together in the blink of an eye. A brand new black divine sword suddenly condensed. This black divine sword was 5 meters long, but its body was very thin, and the power of the reincarnation rule was even more terrifying. The black divine sword trembled slightly as if it was not very stable. Go! Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with a fierce light. The 5-meter-long black magic sword suddenly burst out, leaving a perfect arc in the void. It was like a beautiful black sword light passing by. This sword light was also fascinating. The 3rd level of the Samsara sword formation, Samsara Intoxication. The essence contained in this move was the same as the 7th move of the Spacetime Sword skill, Intoxication. It was intoxicating. Boom. The beautiful black divine sword pierced through 3 mountains in front of it. Its terrifying power was earth-shaking. After a long while, it finally stopped. After it stopped, the black divine sword shook a little as if it was about to collapse, but in the end, it held on. After practicing for 1 year and 4 months and studying it carefully for so long, I finally managed to control the third level of the Samsara sword formation? Jian Wushuang murmured with a smile on his face. He had been staying here for 1 year and 4 months. During this time he had practiced the sword formation countless times, but he had always failed. He had failed countless times, but every time he failed, he became more familiar with the heavy sword formation. But these days he could finally use the third level of the sword formation, and the sword formation would not collapse immediately after it was used. It could be said that he had barely managed to control the sword formation. The reincarnation sword formation was more and more powerful. The power of the third level of the sword formation did not disappoint him. It was much more powerful than the second level. Previously, when I fought with the Marquis of Sanin with all my strength, his speed was slightly suppressed, and his power was even weaker. However, I was unable to use the reincarnation sword formation at that time, and I was unable to fully display my understanding of the reincarnation rule. But now it's different. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands. Now that he had mastered the third level of the Samsara sword formation, his power was extremely powerful, enough to confront the Marquis of Threein head-on. If he combined his swordsmanship with the space-time rule and the Samsara rule, he was confident that he could fight the Marquis of Threein. I'm looking forward to fighting the Marquis of Threein again. Jian Wushuang smiled, but then he shook his head. There's no rush. I just barely mastered the third sword formation. There's still a lot of room for improvement. I can continue to master it. Jian Wushuang did not think much and immediately began to master the sword formation. Unfortunately, the Heaven Void Palace clearly did not intend to give him so much time. Mr. Sword One, come to Crimson Rock Castle quickly. Yin Suer had already sent a message. Jian Wushuang had told Yin Suer that he was cultivating in seclusion and would not pay attention to the outside world. Unless the Heavenly Void Army came, he should not be disturbed. Now that Yin Suer had sent a message to him, it meant that the Heavenly Void Army was coming. It's only been a year, but the Heavenly Void Army has already arrived? It's really fast. Jian Wushuang sighed. Although he was not completely familiar with the third reincarnation sword formation, he did not continue to practice it. Instead, he immediately went to Crimson Rock Castle. When he arrived at Crimson Rock Castle, Jian Wushuang met Yin Suer. Mr. Sword One, I have received news that the Heavenly Void Army has entered the ice field a few days ago. It won't be long before they set foot in the territory of our Pill Sun sacred world, Yin Suer said. Ice field? Jian Wushuang's heart stirred. After knowing that the sacred Sundan world was about to have a great war with the Heaven Void world, he carefully checked some information about the Heaven Void world. He knew that the sacred Sundan world and the Heaven Void world were connected to each other, and the place where they intersected was the ice field. The ice field was jointly occupied by the two worlds. The Heavenly Void Army only needed to cross the ice field to reach the territory of the sacred Sundan world. I thought that the Heavenly Void Army would secretly use the space passage to appear in a certain territory of the Pill Sun sacred world and launch a surprise attack. I didn't expect that they would pass through the ice field and launch a direct attack on the Pill Sun sacred world, Jian Wushuang said in surprise. Jian Wushuang knew very well that since the Heavenly Void Palace had been operating in the Pill Sun sacred world for a period of time and had a relationship with Blood Thunder King, it was impossible that there was no space passage leading directly to the Heavenly Void world in the Pill Sun sacred world. Mr. Sword One, you don't know. Yin Suer smiled. There is indeed a space passage connecting the two worlds. Not only has the Heaven Void world left a space passage in the sacred Sun world, but the sacred Sundan world has also left a space passage in the Heaven Void world. However, it's not easy to activate the space passage connecting the two worlds. It's not a big deal to teleport 1 or 2 people, but this is a war between the two worlds. The Heavenly Void Army has mobilized half of its forces and more than 1,000 experts. It's impossible to teleport through the space passage. That will consume too many resources. Even the master of the Heavenly Void Palace might not be able to afford it. Is that so? Jian Wushuang understood. The farther the space tunnel was, the more expensive it would be to teleport. It was not easy to use the space tunnel that connected the two worlds. We can't rely on the space tunnel. The Heavenly Void Army can only pass through the ice field and rush toward our sacred Sundan world. With their speed, they will arrive in less than half a month. We should go to the edge of the ice field and get ready to block the Heavenly Void Army in the ice field, Yin Suer said. Okay, I'll inform the Sword Alliance right away. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly and immediately sent a message to Elder Tong. Because the Sword Alliance had stopped expanding, Jian Wushuang called the top experts from before. In addition, the Divine Sword Army and the Sword Alliance had developed rapidly over the years. Although it was still only 500 people, they were all elites and powerful divine masters. After all, the Divine Void Army was not entirely made up of divine masters. Most of them were divine masters. The Divine Sword Army could also have a certain amount of combat strength in this war. It could be said that Jian Wushuang had sent out all his forces in this war. However, the Sword Alliance was not the only one to send out all their forces, so was Crimson Rock Castle. In addition, Crimson Rock Castle had been actively preparing during this period of time. It had invited experts from all sides and received the support of certain experts and forces in the Pil Sun Sacred World. Now that they had received Yin Suer's instructions, they naturally left together. In less than a few days, many experts from the Pil Sun Sacred World had already gathered at the edge of the ice fields and were quietly waiting. Chapter 28-24. Great disparity in strength. The void was filled with a bone-chilling cold wind. In front of them was a vast expanse of snow-white endless glaciers that stretched as far as the eye could see. This was the ice field, the boundary between the Pil Sun Sacred World and the Heaven Void World. In the void, countless figures stood there, the cold wind blowing, but no one felt cold or uncomfortable. These people were, of course, many experts from the Pil Sun Sacred World, led by Yin Suer and Jian Wushuang. At this moment, all of them were focused on the void in front of them. "They're here," Yin Suer suddenly said. The experts present all became serious. Under everyone's gaze, an orderly army slowly flew over from the void in front of them. This army was not large, only a few thousand people. However, every single soldier in the army exuded an extremely powerful aura. Most importantly, these auras were all connected to each other, forming a complete entity. They were all wearing silver battle armors. Under the illumination of the glacier below, they looked awe-inspiring. They were clearly a huge army with more than 1,000 people. However, they gave off the feeling that they were just one person. They rushed over from afar at the same speed. When they got close, they stopped in unison. Then the army of more than 1,000 soldiers raised their heads at the same time, and a murderous aura suddenly swept out. This murderous aura was so strong that even the great divine masters in the camp of the Pil Sun Sacred World could not help changing their expressions when they felt it. What a powerful army! Jian Wushuang was also secretly amazed. This was a truly invincible army. It had not even started yet, but the feeling it gave people was completely different. The Divine Sword Army that he created might look like it was made up of elite divine masters, but there were some military formations. In fact, Jian Wushuang knew very well that the combat strength of the Divine Sword Army was not just 1 or 2 levels lower than that of the Heavenly Void Army. After all, the Divine Sword Army had not been established for a long time and had experienced a lot of killing. However, the Heavenly Void Army was different. It had been established a long time ago. It had followed the master of the Heavenly Void Palace to expand its territory. It had experienced countless killings, replaced generations of experts, and was still able to stay in the Heavenly Void Army. Not only were they powerful, but they were also the best of the best. The key was their cooperation and tacit understanding, which was far from what an ordinary army could compare with. Even if it was the Crimson Rock Army at its peak, they might still be able to barely compete with the Heavenly Void Army, but now, they were still far from it. Seeing the Heavenly Void Army appear in the sky, the experts of the Pil Sun Sacred World's camp all had solemn expressions. Yin Suer's gaze sank. Something's wrong. What's wrong? Yun Shan, Palace Master Si Zhen, and the others immediately looked over. The aura of the divine power isn't right. Yin Suer immediately said, "According to the information I received, that Heavenly Void Palace Master only ordered to gather half of the Heavenly Void Army, which is 1,000 people. A 1,000-man army should only have 100 great divine masters. But now, I can sense more than 150 great divine masters' auras from the opposing camp, close to 160. Hearing this, Yun Shan and the others immediately released their soul power and started to sense it. The result was obviously the same as Yin Suer's. There are close to 160 great divine masters' auras. What's going on? Palace Master Si Zhen frowned. If I'm not wrong, not only did that Heavenly Void Palace Master send the Heavenly Void Army, he also sent a portion of great divine lords from the Heavenly Void Palace. In addition to Chen Kong and the others who had been staying in our Pil Sun Sacred World, he only managed to gather close to 160 great divine lords. Yin Suer said in a low voice. As soon as these words were said, all the experts from the Pil Sun Sacred World sucked in a breath of cold air. There were close to 160 great divine masters? Was this a joke? Moreover, they quickly sensed that among the 160 great divine masters, only 60% were beginner great divine masters. The The rest of them were advanced Great Divine Masters and Peak Great Divine Masters. Especially the Peak Great Divine Paragons. When they counted them one by one, they discovered that there were a total of 15 Peak Great Divine Paragons from the Heavenly Void Temple. 15 Peak Great Divine Masters, 140 Advanced and Beginner Great Divine Masters, and an invincible Heavenly Void Army. Their lineup was actually this powerful? Looking at the turn of events in the Pil Sun Sacred World, even though Yin Suer had been trying her best to rope in experts from various factions to participate in the battle, it was too short of time after all. Furthermore, Crimson Rock Castle's WeChat was already insufficient. Up until now, only about 70 Great Divine Masters had been persuaded, including those from Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Alliance. There was only about 70 Great Divine Masters present. That's right, there were about 70 Great Divine Masters. In terms of quality, most of them were just beginner Great Divine Masters. This was all that Yin Suer could gather. As for the number of Divine Masters, there were quite a number of them. The Crimson Rock Legion, the Divine Sword Legion, and the legions created by the 4 top factions had all been brought over. There were also 4,000 Divine Masters legions that were temporarily formed by many Divine Masters from various factions. However, although there were many Deity Masters, they did not cooperate with each other. They had the experience of fighting together. If they were to really fight, their combat strength would probably be far inferior to the Heavenly Void Army that only had 1,000 people. The difference in strength between the two sides' lineup was simply too great. Damn it. I originally thought that the Heavenly Void Army that only had 1,000 people would arrive. With the combat strength that our Pil Sun Sacred World has gathered now, we should have the strength to fight. I did not expect that the Heavenly Void Temple Master would actually send more than 50 Great Deity Masters. Yin Suer clenched her teeth tightly. 50 Great Divine Masters? That was too much power. The extra 50 Great Divine Masters were beyond her expectations and beyond the scope of the Sacred Sundan World. Yin Suer was not the only one. Many experts from the Sacred Sundan World had already figured out the difference in strength between their camps. All of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Jian Wushuang was the only one who looked calm. There are nearly 160 Great Divine Masters. The Master of the Heaven Void Temple is quite generous. Jian Wushuang even chuckled. Mr. Sword One, how can you still laugh when there is such a huge difference between the two camps? Do you have a way to deal with it? Yun Shan, who was beside him, noticed the change in Jian Wushuang's expression and immediately said, "If you have a way to do it, you can just deal with it." Jian Wushuang smiled. Mr. Sword One, this battle is not a trivial matter. It concerns the life and death of our Pil Sun Sacred World. If you have any preparations, please take them out as soon as possible, Yin Suer said anxiously. Chapter 28-25. In front of the battle, many experts from the Pil Sun Sacred World were staring at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's prestige in the Pil Sun Sacred World was too high. Many people knew that the reason why Crimson Rock Castle was able to win the previous battles and regain control of the Pil Sun Sacred World was mainly because of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang had created one miracle after another in the Pil Sun Sacred World. Now that both sides were at such a huge disadvantage, these people also hoped that Jian Wushuang could create another miracle. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang could not help but smile. I have indeed prepared some methods for this battle. If they are used well and everyone works together, they should be able to contend with the experts of the Heavenly Void Temple in front of them. They might even have a good chance of winning. As for what these methods are, I won't say for now. I will use them when the time comes. Hearing this, the surrounding people nodded heavily. At the same time, they felt more confident. If Jian Wushuang did not prepare any tricks, they would not be able to fight against him with their current strength. However, since Jian Wushuang had prepared in advance and was facing all kinds of legends about Jian Wushuang, they had some confidence in their hearts. However, Yin Suer and Yun Shan looked at each other in dismay. They did not think that Jian Wushuang really had trump cards. Instead, they thought that Jian Wushuang was pretending to be calm so that the morale of their camp would not completely collapse. In the opposite camp, in the Heavenly Void Army, the sergeants of the Heavenly Void Army all looked cold and solemn. At the front, many great divine masters of the Heavenly Void Palace gathered together. The leader was a burly man in dark green armor. This burly man was the commander of the Heavenly Void Army. As the commander of the Heavenly Void Army, although he was only a peak great divine master, his position in the Heavenly Void Palace was not inferior to that of the Marquis of 3 Yin, who was an invincible divine master. Behind this commander of the Heavenly Void Army, there were a few silver-armored men standing there. These people were the generals of the Heavenly Void Army. At this moment, Many experts of the Heavenly Void Temple were also looking at the scene in front of them with interest. It seems that the Pill Sun Sacred World has really declined. They were given so much time to prepare, yet this Crimson Rock Castle only managed to gather so few experts. There are less than 70 great divine masters? A general could not help but snicker. The people beside them also revealed looks of disdain. After all, this was a world. Logically speaking, it should be easy to casually bring out more than 100 great divine masters. However, the Crimson Rock Castle had so much time to prepare, yet they only managed to gather less than 70 great divine masters. This number was indeed a little too few. It was very normal for the people from the Heavenly Void Temple to look down on them. One had to know that in the Heavenly Void world, the Heavenly Void Temple Master's words carried weight. He did not need to prepare much. With just a word of instruction, he had mobilized far more great divine masters than the Pill Sun Sacred World. The Pill Sun Sacred World, when Sage Redstone was still alive, was worthy of our Heavenly Void World's attention. But now, it's too weak. This time I thought that we would have a tough battle with the Pill Sun Sacred World. But now it seems like we don't have the chance. Just based on the experts gathered in the Pill Sun Sacred World, our Heavenly Void Army only needs to charge forward, and these experts of the Sacred Pill Sun World will be defeated. Many experts of the Heavenly Void Temple were chatting casually. Not many people took these experts of the Pill Sun Sacred World seriously. Only the commander of the Heavenly Void Army had an incomparably cold expression. Although the battle strength of the Pill Sun Sacred World's camp cannot compare to ours, their strength is still not weak. Not only do we have to defeat them, but we also have to strive for the least casualties. Marquis of Threen. The commander of the Heavenly Void Army suddenly looked at the Marquis of Threen, who was standing quietly at the side. The Marquis of Threen's position in the Heavenly Void Palace was extremely high, second only to the Master of the Heavenly Void Palace. However, the commander of the Heavenly Void Army was also the right-hand man of the Master of the Heavenly Void Palace. The two of them could talk to each other as equals. What's the matter? The Marquis of Threen swept his gaze over. I heard that you fought with the strongest expert of the Pill Sun Sacred World before and you had the absolute advantage? The commander of the Heavenly Void Army asked. That's true. The Marquis of Threen nodded. That's good. I need you to come out now and fight with the strongest expert of the Pill Sun Sacred World in front of the experts from both sides. The commander of the Heavenly Void Army said. Fight again? Are you trying to? The Marquis of Threen frowned. He had already guessed the intentions of the commander of the Heavenly Void Army. That's right. I want to weaken the morale of the Pill Sun Sacred World camp. The Heavenly Void Army commander said, I've heard of the strongest person in the Pill Sun Sacred World before. He seems to be called Sword One, and he's only a senior great divine venerate. However, his prestige in the Pill Sun Sacred World is extremely high. Previously, the Pill Sun Sacred World had endless internal strife. It was because of his help that Sewer was able to turn the tides. Right now, once the great war between our Heavenly Oasis World and the Pill Sun Sacred World breaks out, even if the experts of the Pill Sun Sacred World are no match for him, they will most likely fight to the end with all their might. This is because most of them will believe that this sword will once again turn the tide of the battle. Even if this Sword One doesn't have the strength, as long as he opens his mouth and casually says something, such as saying that he still has some trump cards that he has yet to use, the experts of the Pill Sun Sacred World will most likely believe him. At that time, when they start fighting madly, it will be quite troublesome for us. That's why I asked you to attack now and kill Sword One directly in front of the experts of the Pill Sun Sacred World, or even severely injure him. No matter what, you just need to defeat him or suppress him. As long as the people of the Pill Sun Sacred World see their strongest expert showing signs of defeat, their morale will plummet. They won't be too crazy to resist, and it will save us a lot of trouble. I understand. The Marquis of Threen nodded slightly. He also knew the intention of this Heavenly Void Army commander. The Marquis of Threen did not hesitate too much and immediately moved forward. The Marquis of Threen crossed a distance and stopped in the middle of the two camps. His cold eyes looked at the many experts of the Pill Sun Sacred World. Sword One. His magnificent voice spread across the entire ice field. In the Pill Sun Sacred World, the experts immediately looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's expression was strange. He immediately walked forward. Marquis of Threen, what do you want to do? Jian Wushuang asked in a deep voice. Nothing. It's just that the last time I fought in your Sword Alliance's headquarters, I didn't have a good time. Now that I see it again, I can't help but want to fight with you again, the Marquis of Threen said with a faint smile. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's pupils suddenly shrank. Chapter 28-26. Another battle with the Marquis of 3 Another battle? Jian Wushuang looked at Marquis 3 with interest. He was not stupid. Now that the experts of the two worlds were fighting, the Marquis of 3 had come to fight with him before the battle had even begun. It was clear that he wanted to defeat Jian Wushuang and give a blow to the morale of the camp of the Pil Sun Sacred World, so as to give the Heavenly Void Army a greater advantage. If it were more than a year ago, Jian Wushuang would have never accepted the challenge. But now, to be honest, he really wanted to have a face-to-face fight with the Marquis of 3. Now was the chance. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Jian Wushuang's voice shook the sky. He had already agreed directly. You are so bold. The corners of the Marquis of 3's mouth curled up slightly. When Yin Suer and the others saw Jian Wushuang accept the challenge, their expressions changed. They all knew that Jian Wushuang was not as strong as the Marquis of 3. The last time they fought, more than a year ago, although the Marquis of 3 could not defeat Jian Wushuang, if they fought again now, it would be a blow to the morale of the experts in the camp of the Pil Sun Sacred World. Mr. Sword 1. Yin Suer could not help but look at Jian Wushuang. Don't worry. Since I dare to fight, I'm sure of it. Jian Wushuang smiled. Seeing this, Yin Suer did not say anything more. Whoosh. Jian Wushuang rushed forward and met the Marquis of 3 in the middle of the two camps. Sword 1, I know you're a real genius, but no matter how great a genius you are, I'm afraid your strength won't improve much in just a year. The Marquis of 3 stared at Jian Wushuang. You'll know when you try. Jian Wushuang smiled. Rumble. Boundless golden divine power surged out from his body, and a 30,000-meter-tall golden emperor phantom soon appeared behind him. The 7-star power in his body also began to be activated. Jian Wushuang used the 7-star secret skill, Punishment Divine Realm Expert, and the 9 Luminary Star Armor in an instant, and his battle strength reached its peak. At the same time, buzz. Layers of domains were completely unleashed. The Golden Light Realm, Star Armor Realm, Punishment Prison, and Sword Principal World were perfectly combined, and they pressed toward the Marquis of 3 crazily. This move again? Even the power is the same. It seems that you haven't improved at all in the past year. The Marquis of 3 sneered, and a pair of scarlet claw gloves appeared in his hands. The Marquis of 3 put on the claw gloves. There were 5 sharp claws on the scarlet claw gloves, which were as long as the sharp claws of a fierce beast and extremely sharp and cold. If you have any tricks, just use them, Jian Wushuang said calmly. As you wish. The Marquis of 3 gave a strange smile, but his body suddenly moved. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Numerous afterimages flashed in the void in front of Jian Wushuang. Even under the crazy pressure of the realm, the Marquis of 3's speed was still far faster than an ordinary person's. Even compared to Jian Wushuang's ultimate speed, he was a little faster. His figure appeared in front of Jian Wushuang like a ghost, and then he mercilessly clawed out with his ice-cold claws. The void seemed to be torn apart. Humph! Jian Wushuang snorted, and the Blood Mountain sword in his hand immediately went up to meet him. Clang, clang, clang. The dense sounds of collision kept ringing out, and both of them had reached their maximum speed. Fast, really fast. At least, most of the experts from both sides who were watching the battle could not catch their shadows. Haha, it's the same scene as the last one and the same ending. The Marquis of 3 laughed loudly in the fierce battle. The same scene? Really? Jian Wushuang gave a strange smile. The two sides continued to compete in speed, but suddenly Jian Wushuang raised his left hand slightly. Swish, 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 swish. Streams of black light shot out like black lightning. The speed of these black streams of light was strange, and the key was their power. The Marquis of 3 who was relying on his own speed to suppress Jian Wushuang, could not help but change his expression. He also subconsciously retreated. As he retreated, he waved his sharp claws and sent the black streams of light flying. After the black streams of light were sent flying, they quickly floated in the void in front of Jian Wushuang. It was only then that they could clearly see that the black streams of light were black divine swords that emitted a powerful aura and the power of reincarnation. The black divine swords lined up in a row and floated there. After careful counting, there were a total of 18 of them. The Marquis of 3 frowned as he looked at the 18 black divine swords. This is a sword formation. I'm afraid you didn't see it when I fought with you last time. Now, I'll show you the power of my sword formation, Jian Wushuang said with a faint smile. In an instant, under his control, 18 black divine swords burst out. They turned into 18 bolts of black lightning and burst out. Boom, 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 boom. Under Jian Wushuang's many secret skill trump cards, each black divine sword was accompanied by powerful power. Each black divine sword's power was close to the strength of a peak great divine master, but the key point was that there were a total of 18 black divine swords. The 18 black divine swords madly rushed toward the Marquis of Three from all directions. Even though the Marquis of Three was powerful, he had to defend with all his strength at this moment. Clang, clang, clang. After a series of dense metal colliding sounds, the 18 black divine swords were sent flying again by the Marquis of Three. Humph, it's just a little more, but it's not that powerful. Do you think you can do anything to me with such a method? The Marquis of Three's voice was cold, and a layer of blood-colored fog had already spread out from his body. It's too early for you to be happy. Jian Wushuang sneered and then, buzz. Under Jian Wushuang's control, the black swords directly overlapped and combined at an amazing speed. The 18 long swords gathered in two directions at the same time. Each of the 9 swords became one, and finally they formed 2 sword formations at the same time. In the second level of the Samsara sword formation, everything was heavy. The power of the Samsara sword formation was powerful. Although the second level of the sword formation could be formed by controlling 9 divine swords, it required a lot of divine power to control only one sword formation. It also required 18 divine swords to control 2 sword formations at the same time. Only Jian Wushuang, who had perfect control over the sword formation and extremely strong divine power and consciousness, could do this. The 2 sword formations consisted of 2 giant black trees, each of which carried a shocking power. In a flash, they attacked the Marquis of Three from both sides. Chapter 28-27. Drunken Samsara. Although there were many black divine swords, the Marquis of Three did not think much of their power. But now, as these black divine swords formed a sword formation and the 2 giant black trees charged at them, even the Marquis of Three did not dare to underestimate their power. Boom, boom. The 2 huge black trees were charging at them from both sides. The blood-colored fog on the Marquis of Three's body surged, but his right hand was swung out like lightning. 2 claws appeared one after another, and each claw was blood-colored. In the void, 2 blood-colored lights seemed to flash out explosively. These 2 blood-colored lights truly tore apart the heaven and earth, and in the blink of an eye, they struck the 2 huge black trees. Bang, bang. The 2 giant black trees were sent flying again. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang was not angry at all. Instead he smiled. Under his control, the 2 giant black trees immediately disintegrated and turned back into black magic swords. Condense. Jian Wushuang spoke again and uttered a word. The 18 black magic swords condensed again, but this time 18 of them condensed at the same time. Buzz. A faint humming sound like the sound of a sword rang out slowly. A brand new 5-meter-long extremely thin black divine sword appeared between heaven and earth. The 18 black divine swords gathered together. This brand new black divine sword was filled with a frightening amount of power of the law of reincarnation. The sword intent and power it contained were even more shocking. This sword formation. The Marquis of Three's pupils shrank as he looked at the newly formed sword formation. If the 2 sword formations that Jian Wushuang had formed at the same time only made him take them seriously, then the newly formed sword formation was so powerful that even he changed his expression. The power contained in this sword formation had definitely reached the level of an invincible divine master. Sword One has never displayed such a powerful sword formation when he fought with me last time. But now, it has only been more than a year. The Marquis of Three frowned and could not believe it. However, no matter how much he did not believe it, the truth was right in front of him. Kill? Jian Wushuang shouted, and the 5-meter-long black magic sword, which was emitting a shocking power, instantly shot out through the void. The black magic sword left a perfect arc in the void, giving people the feeling that it was a beautiful black sword light. The sword light was absolutely beautiful and intoxicating. It was the 3rd level of the Samsara sword formation, Samsara intoxication. Humph. The Marquis of Three snorted and suddenly rushed forward, gathering vast divine power in his hand. The blood-red claw was slightly clenched, and it brought with it the blood-red power that filled the sky as it slashed out like lightning. Heart-ripping divine claw. The Marquis of Three's gaze was cold, and he had already used one of his 2 ultimate moves, the heart-ripping divine claw. The beautiful black divine sword was incomparably swift and fierce, and in the blink of an eye, it collided head-on with the blood-red claw. This collision immediately caused the sound of metal colliding to ring out. There was not much divine power fluctuation, because the two divine powers had almost worn each other out when they collided. The black divine sword shook slightly and then moved to the side. The Marquis of Three's eyes narrowed. The tremendous impact force contained in the black divine sword forced him to take a few steps back. After a few steps, the Marquis of Three regained his balance, but his face had become extremely ugly. Marquis of Three, how do you feel? Jian Wushuang stood in the distance and looked at the Marquis of Three with a sneer on his face. Sword One, don't be so proud. Don't think that I can't do anything to you with this sword formation, the Marquis of Three said coldly. You're still stubborn? Jian Wushuang smiled disdainfully. Since the sword formation can't do anything to you, what about this sword formation and my swordsmanship? As soon as Jian Wushuang's voice fell, a huge domain rushed toward the Marquis of Three. Jian Wushuang also moved. In terms of speed, Jian Wushuang was also extremely fast, like a ghost. The Marquis of Three's eyes were like lightning. He wanted to capture Jian Wushuang's figure, but suddenly, a slight sword hum sounded in the void around him, and the black magic sword with endless reincarnation power shot toward him again. Damn it! The Marquis of Three did not dare to underestimate the power of the black magic sword, so he had to immediately block it. However, as soon as he blocked the black magic sword, Jian Wushuang's figure appeared beside him. Then, a series of strange sword techniques containing the majestic spacetime rule attacked him. The reincarnation sword formation exerted the reincarnation rule to the extreme, while Jian Wushuang's sword technique exerted the spacetime rule to the extreme. The two rules complemented each other. One used close combat, while the other formed a sword formation to attack continuously. It was a perfect combination. For a time, Jian Wushuang's battle strength had soared to the limit. Under such circumstances, the Marquis of Three's advantage in speed and strength had been greatly limited. The blood-colored fog on his body surged, and he had also maximized his strength. However, even so, he could only fight with Jian Wushuang to a draw. As for the scene where he easily suppressed Jian Wushuang more than a year ago, it had never happened again. This kid, the last time I fought with him was just more than a year ago. At that time I could easily suppress him. But now, when I fight with him head-on, I can't even gain the slightest advantage? Marquis of Three was extremely shocked, but he was more unwilling. He wanted to find an opportunity to use his strongest skill. However, with the combination of Jian Wushuang's sword formation and swordsmanship, he could not find an opportunity to use his strongest skill. Indeed, he did not have the slightest advantage in the fight with Jian Wushuang. On both sides of the battlefield, the experts from both sides of the Pill Sun Sacred World and the Heavenly Void World were shocked to see the battlefield. Who is this person? How can he be on par with the Marquis of Three? The Marquis of Three has tried his best, but he still can't gain any advantage. This Sword One is so powerful. The Marquis of Three has fought with this Sword One not long ago. Last time he definitely suppressed Sword One. But now it has only been a year. This Sword One hasn't made any breakthroughs. How can he improve so much? Many experts of the Heavenly Void World could not believe what they were seeing. The Marquis of Three was a supreme existence in the Heavenly Void World, second only to the Heavenly Void Temple Master. They all knew how powerful the invincible Divine Master was. And Sword One was able to fight him to a draw. This was enough to show Sword One's battle strength. As for the experts of the Pill Sun Sacred World, they were also shocked. Chapter 28. Hidden Loss. How could Alliance Master Sword One be on par with the Marquis of Three? This Elder Tong, Great Divine Master Ju Xin, and other experts from the Sword Alliance were all shocked. After all, they had witnessed the battle between Jian Wushuang and the Marquis of Three more than a year ago. Although the Marquis of Three could not defeat Jian Wushuang in the end, it was obvious that the Marquis of Three was much stronger than Jian Wushuang in terms of strength. Jian Wushuang had only relied on his body protection ability to survive, the Marquis of Three. But now Jian Wushuang was on par with the Marquis of Three in just over a year? How could he have improved so much in just over a year? No wonder Mr. Sword One dared to accept the challenge. It turns out that he was already confident. Yin Suer, Yun Shan, and the others stood there, looking at the scene on the battlefield with a pleasant surprise. Jian Wushuang, who was fighting wildly with the Marquis of Three in the middle of the battlefield, was not very satisfied with the situation in front of him. The Marquis of Three is indeed an invincible divine master. I controlled the reincarnation sword formation and fought him with spacetime swordsmanship. He was still suppressed by my domain, but in the end I was only on par with him, A draw is not what I want. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. He agreed to fight the Marquis of 3 in front of the two armies because he had absolute confidence in his strength and knew that he was strong enough to fight the Marquis of 3 now. Secondly, he had the same idea as the Marquis of 3. He also wanted to defeat the Marquis of 3 in front of the experts of the Heavenly Void Palace, which would bring a certain blow to the experts of the Heavenly Void Palace. It was obviously not enough for them to fight to a draw. Let's not talk about defeating the Marquis of 3 first. At least I have to let him suffer some losses. Jian Wushuang made up his mind, and his eyes immediately flashed with a fierce light. He was just relying on his swordsmanship to compete with the Marquis of 3 in speed, but suddenly Jian Wushuang's sword momentum changed. An invisible sword essence burst out. He just casually swung his sword, looking like an ordinary person slashing a wooden sword. However, when he swung his long sword, a sword light immediately lit up. This sword light was extremely weak, extremely dim and incomplete. It was an incomplete light, a remnant light. However, when this remnant light appeared in the blink of an eye, there were hundreds and thousands of scattered lights in the world. Under the eyes of many experts on the battlefield, the original Jian Wushuang suddenly became hundreds and thousands of people. It was the 8th move of space-time swordsmanship, thousand-sided residual light. Ultimate skill? Seeing the residual light coming toward him, the Marquis of 3's eyes turned cold. He suddenly stretched out his right hand. It was still the divine claw, but this claw was also faster. Bang! A crisp sound rang out. The ray of light that Jian Wushuang used was caught by the Marquis of 3's right claw. After catching it, Jian Wushuang's expression did not change. Not far from him, the black divine sword formed by 18 underworld blood swords pierced through again. Their speed and power were extremely powerful. Annoying thing, get away from me. The Marquis of 3 growled, trying to push back the sword formation. However, at this moment, Jian Wushuang pointed his index finger at a distance. Buzz, buzz, a majestic power of space-time rule swept out immediately. Space-time divine skill, 1-point divine skill. Jian Wushuang had not used this move when he was fighting the Marquis of 3 before, but now he had suddenly used it. This time, there was no sign of it, and the Marquis of 3 was not vigilant, but he sensed that the power of space-time rule had already taken effect. In an instant, the space-time around the Marquis of 3 froze. The Marquis of 3 himself immediately froze and lost the ability to resist. However, the Marquis of 3 was, after all, a powerful invincible divine master. Although Jian Wushuang's comprehension of the space-time rule was extremely high, his divine power was still inferior. The heaven-designated skill he was using now, it was indeed very useful for a peak great divine master, but it was not very effective for an invincible divine master like the Marquis of 3. The Marquis of 3 was frozen for only a moment, which was very short. When he came back to his senses, the black divine sword had only just appeared in front of him. Although he was caught off guard, the Marquis of 3 was still able to block it. Get lost. With a loud shout, the Marquis of 3 swung his claw. Clang. The blood-red claw collided with the black divine sword. After all, the Marquis of 3 was caught off guard. He did not exert his full strength, but he was at an absolute disadvantage in this collision. Humph! The Marquis of 3 even let out a muffled groan and his body was forced back. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang could not help but smile. Although the collision did not cause much damage to the Marquis of 3, he still made the Marquis of 3 suffer a hidden loss and made him a little embarrassed. This little embarrassment was enough for Jian Wushuang. On the side of the battlefield, the experts of the Heavenly Void Palace had been watching the battle attentively. When they saw that Jian Wushuang could fight with the Marquis of 3, they were already very surprised, but now they saw Jian Wushuang force the Marquis of 3 to retreat. And judging from the Marquis of 3's expression, it was obvious that he had suffered a hidden loss. This made the experts of the Heavenly Void Temple look very strange. At the front of the experts, the commander of the Heavenly Void Army was also a little pale. He had asked the Marquis of 3 to fight because he wanted the Marquis of 3 to defeat Sword 1 directly, which would cause a certain blow to the morale of the experts of the Pill Sun Sacred World. But now, after the battle, the morale of the experts of the Pill Sun Sacred World did not suffer a blow. On the contrary, it had increased quite a lot. On the other hand, the experts from their Heavenly Void Palace camp were more or less unhappy when they saw that the Marquis of 3 had suffered a hidden loss. It could be said that he had stolen the chicken but failed. There is no need to waste time. Let's directly act. The expression of the commander of the Heavenly Void Army sank. His majestic voice sounded across the entire ice plains. Heavenly Void Army, move out. Following the command of the Heavenly Void Army's commander, the Heavenly Void Army, whose expression was filled with solemnness and killing intent, immediately moved out. It was not just the Heavenly Void Army. The great divine masters from the Heavenly Void Palace also rushed out at the same time. On the Heavenly Void Realm's side, there were nearly 160 great divine masters. In addition to the many heavenly divine masters within the Heavenly Void Army, they were like wasps as they directly rushed over. Seeing this scene, the gazes of the experts from the Pill Sun Sacred Realm also turned cold. Chapter 28-29, The Slaughter has begun. Everyone kill for the Pill Sun Sacred World. Sewer said in a cold but determined voice. The eyes of the experts from the Pill Sun Sacred World's camp turned scarlet. Kill? As a series of heaven-toppling battle cries sounded, the experts from the Pill Sun Sacred World's camp moved at the same time. The Pill Sun Sacred World had far more light will experts than the Heavenly Void Realm. After all, the Pill Sun Sacred World had many heavenly divine masters. These heavenly divine masters did not fight on their own. Instead, they formed battle formations and strategies. A battle formed by dozens of heavenly divine masters could also have the battle strength of great divine masters. With so many divine masters joining forces, it was also an extraordinary battle strength. The Pill Sun Sacred World knew very well that in terms of battle strength, there was too much of a gap between them and the other side, so they could only rely on these divine masters to form battle formations to make up for it. But even so, there was still a huge gap in battle strength between the two sides. In the blink of an eye, countless experts from both sides clashed head-on. Boom, 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 boom. A series of violent explosions reverberated in the sky and earth, and violent divine power exploded wantonly. The entire battlefield immediately became fiery hot. In the void at the center of the battlefield, Jianghu and the Marquis of 3 were still engaged in a fierce battle. Although the Marquis of 3 had suffered a loss at the hands of Jianghu, it was not a big deal. He could still fight evenly with Jianghu. Humph, Sword One, I didn't expect that your strength had improved so much in just a year. Unfortunately, it's useless. You can't control this battle alone. You've been fighting in the inner sanctum for many years, and your strength has been weakened to the extreme. The experts gathered here can't compete with the army of our Heaven Void Palace. The difference is too great. Today's battle will be your defeat for sure. Ha ha. Ha ha. The Marquis of 3 laughed wildly, and his laughter echoed in the surroundings. Jianghu narrowed his eyes. Although he had been fighting fiercely with the Marquis of 3, he still saw the surrounding scene clearly. Indeed, as the Marquis of 3 had said, the overall combat strength of the two camps was too far apart. Even if the experts of the Pill Sun Sacred World tried their best to kill the enemy, the difference in combat strength could not be made up for. Especially at the level of the Great Deity, the Heavenly Void Temple had close to 160 people, more than 90 more than the Pill Sun Sacred World. Moreover, the Heavenly Void Army was well trained, and their combat strength was far from what the temporary Heavenly Divine Army could compare with. This resulted in the Pill Sun Sacred World being completely suppressed from the very beginning of this great battle. It could even be said to be completely suppressed. Kill. Kill. The soldiers of the Heavenly Void Army all had solemn expressions. They were like machines. Under the leadership of their respective generals, they attacked in an orderly manner, splitting into 2 rounds of attacks. Their coordination was incomparably perfect, and their combat strength was unleashed to the extreme. Under the reckless attack of the Heavenly Void Army, the battle formations formed by the divine masters of the Danyang Sacred World camp were easily shattered like paper. On the level of great divine masters of both sides, even if Sewer, Yunshan, Elder Tong, and the other peak great divine masters tried their best, the opponent had more peak great divine masters. There were 15 of them and they were also overwhelming. Seeing this, Jianghu sighed secretly. He knew that he had to make a move. The Marquis of 3, get out of my way. Jianghu shouted. The black divine sword condensed from 18 Netherblood divine swords stabbed wildly at the Marquis of 3's head, forcing him to defend himself. However, Jianghu suddenly retreated. He stood firm in the void and looked at the surrounding battlefield. Jianghu narrowed his eyes and then waved his hand. Swish, 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 swish. Streams of flowing light flew out of Jianghu's interspatial ring. These flowing lights were of different colors. Most of them were copper, followed by silver, and fewer were golden. These flowing lights condensed in the void around Jianghu. In just a moment, more than 100 flowing lights or more than 100 figures appeared. As soon as these figures appeared, the tyrannical aura on their bodies burst out instantly. More than 100 tyrannical auras burst out at the same time. On the battlefield, the experts from both sides who had been fighting fiercely and passionately could not help but stop when they sensed the more than 100 tyrannical auras. Then, one by one, they looked in Jian Wushuang's direction with shock and astonishment. What are those? Are they experts? No, they are lifeless. They should be corpse puppets. Corpse puppets? So many corpse puppets? Exclamations sounded in the center of the battlefield. The experts from the Holy Sundan World Camp and the Heavenly Void Army Camp were all stunned when they saw hundreds of lifeless figures suddenly appear around Jian Wushuang. Corpse puppets? Yes, the figures that suddenly appeared were all corpse puppets. But the point was that there were too many of them. There were hundreds of them. The most important thing was the powerful aura emitted by these corpse puppets. Even the weakest one was comparable to an ordinary Senior Great Divine Master, and the slightly stronger one was at the peak of the Senior Great Divine Master level. There were also 11 corpse puppets whose bodies were suffused with a faint golden light. Their divine power aura had even reached the peak Great Divine Master level. An army. This was an incomparably powerful corpse puppet army formed by over 100 corpse puppets. Everyone's eyes were wide open. They did not understand where this corpse puppet army came from. Only a small portion of them noticed the young figure in the middle who was surrounded by many corpse puppets. Sword One, it's Sword One. These corpse puppets were all taken out by Sword One. How could he have so many corpse puppets? One voice after another sounded with fear. These terrified voices were naturally from experts from the Heaven Void World Camp. As for the people from the Pill Sun Sacred World, they were all ecstatic. Especially Yin Suer, Yun Shan, Palace Master Si Zhen, and the others. They had seen Jian Wushuang's confident look and had asked him about it. Jian Wushuang's answer was that he did have some tricks that he would use at the critical moment. At that time, they had half believed it and thought that Jian Wushuang's words might be just to boost the confidence of their camp. Even if Jian Wushuang had prepared a method, they did not think that his method was very powerful. But now. Chapter 2830. The Corpse Puppet Army was dispatched. Corpse Puppet Army, let's kill them. Jian Wushuang said softly. Standing around Jian Wushuang, the hundreds of lifeless corpse puppets suddenly raised their heads and released a terrifying divine power aura. In the next moment, they turned into streams of light and charged toward the experts in the sky mirage like a pack of hungry wolves. The entire corpse puppet army was mobilized. This was the battle strength of more than 100 advanced Great Divine Masters. Even the battle strength of peak Great Divine Masters had 11 of them. This battle strength was too powerful. It was simply too tyrannical. The moment they entered the battlefield, they immediately changed the situation of the entire battlefield. Not good. Be careful. These corpse puppets, the expressions of the experts from the Heavenly Mirage World Camp changed drastically. They originally had an absolute advantage and could even be said to be crushing. However, with these corpse puppets entering the battlefield, the situation was completely reversed in terms of Great Divine Master's battle strength. One had to know that the Heavenly Mirage World Camp had less than 160 Great Divine Masters in total, and more than half of them were low-level Great Divine Masters. But now, the Corpse Puppet Army was made up of high-level Great Divine Masters. The weakest was a high-level Great Divine Master, and there were also quite a few high-level peak Great Divine Masters. With such formidable combat strength, even without the Great Divine Masters of the Pill Sun Sacred World, the Corpse Puppet Army alone should be enough to fight these Great Divine Masters of the Heavenly Void World. If the Pill Sun Sacred World had nearly 70 Great Divine Masters, the gap would be too great. It was even greater than the Heavenly Void World Camp's advantage over the Pill Sun Sacred World Camp. Kill them. Leave all these bastards of the Heavenly Void World behind. The experts of the Pill Sun Sacred World were all extremely excited when they saw such a powerful corpse puppet army join the battlefield as their own camp. The morale of the Pill Sun Sacred World Camp also soared. Many experts also attacked with all their might. Together with the corpse puppet army, they began to crush the Heavenly Void World Camp. Damn it. Sword One, where did he get so many corpse puppets? These corpse puppets are too troublesome. Chen Kong's face was gloomy in the Heavenly Ethereal Realms camp. He had already fought with a golden armored corpse puppet. This golden armored corpse puppet was naturally not his opponent in a one-on-one fight. However, there were too many corpse puppets around, which made him feel even more troubled. And at this moment, a blood-colored figure suddenly appeared in front of him. that blood-colored figure clenched his fist once again, and blood clouds rolled down. A huge fist directly smashed towards Qin Kong's face. Qin Kong was shocked, but he was not afraid at all. He similarly swung his fist, wanting to block that blood-colored figure's fist head-on. Bang! The two fists collided head-on. At the moment of collision, the sound of bones cracking was immediately heard. Qin Kong was frightened. This power? Qin Kong looked at the blood-red figure in front of him. He did not expect the power contained in the blood-red figure's fist to be so terrifying. When the fist collided with the bones in his right arm exploded. A terrifying power even passed through his arm and directly into his divine body. Pooh! Qin Kong's divine body trembled and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His body also shot backward in a sorry state. At the same time he let out a fierce shout. Invincible Divine Master. It's a corpse puppet at the level of Invincible Divine Master. Qin Kong's shout was incomparably loud and clear, reverberating throughout the entire battlefield. The many experts who were frantically fighting on the battlefield all heard this shout. In an instant, many gazes locked onto the blood-colored figure. The blood-colored figure was similarly lifeless. Clearly it was also a corpse puppet. However, they had already noticed that although it was also a corpse puppet, the aura emitted by this blood-colored corpse puppet was far more powerful than those golden-armored corpse puppets. There was no doubt that this was indeed a corpse puppet at the level of an invincible divine master. Damn it, there are even corpse puppets at the level of an invincible divine master. The Heavenly Void Army commander's expression changed drastically, and he could not help but curse in his heart. Just the corpse puppet army made up of copper-armored, silver-armored, and golden-armored corpse puppets had put them at a peerless disadvantage when they entered the battlefield. They had even been completely crushed. In the end, this corpse puppet army, there was even a blood-armored corpse puppet at the level of an invincible divine master. After all, an invincible divine master was far superior to many great divine masters. He could slaughter a great divine master or even a great divine master at the peak, all by himself. The Marquis of 3 was the only invincible divine master present in the heavenly void world. Jianghu, who was on par with the Marquis of 3 in the Pill Sun sacred world, naturally had invincible divine master's combat strength. Since the beginning of the battle, the two invincible divine masters had only been able to keep each other in check. However, if either side suddenly made a move, it would be a disaster for the experts of the other side. But now, the Marquis of 3 and Jianghu were both still in a stalemate. Neither side could make a move, but the Pill Sun sacred world had one more invincible divine master. Swish. On the battlefield, the blood-red corpse puppet rampaged through the crowd, wantonly attacking the experts of the heavenly void world. The blood-red corpse puppet was not good at speed, but it was extremely powerful. Its fists kept striking out. The terrifying power contained in those fists was enough to easily kill an advanced divine master, and a peak divine master would be severely injured by it. Although they could not die, they would still be heavily injured. Bang, 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 bang. One fist after another was blasted out. In the blink of an eye, a total of 11 great divine masters of the heavenly void army had died at the hands of this blood-colored corpse puppet, and 2 peak great divine masters had been heavily injured by it. It was unstoppable. No one could stop the blood-colored corpse puppet's footsteps. He rampaged through the crowd and massacred wantonly. This made the battlefield, which was already tilted toward the Pill Sun sacred world, even more so. The commander of the heavenly void army also joined in the battle. As he fought, he was also constantly concerned about the changes in the situation on the battlefield. The situation in front of him was naturally seen by the commander of the heavenly void army. This corpse puppet army is too powerful. With the existence of that blood-armored corpse puppet, their overall combat power is much stronger than our camp. Our camp has suffered heavy losses from the battle until now, and we are on the verge of defeat. If we continue to fight fiercely, we will only lose more experts. The commander of the heavenly void army narrowed his eyes. Soon he made up his mind. Those who belong to the heavenly oasis, retreat. All of you retreat. Chapter 28:31, Wins. Retreat, quickly retreat. As soon as the commander of the heavenly void army gave the order, the experts of the heavenly void realm camp immediately began to retreat like a tide. Naturally, the people of the Pill Sun sacred world were unrelenting. They seized the opportunity to pursue and kill. In the center of the battlefield, Jianghu and the Marquis of 3 were fighting head-on. Neither side could do anything to the other. However, they were aware of the situation around them. They lost. The Marquis of 3 was in disbelief, but his eyes were staring at Jian Wushuang coldly. Sword One, you have good skills. You control such a powerful corpse puppet army. I want to know where you got these corpse puppets, the Marquis of 3 said coldly. It has nothing to do with you, Marquis 3, right? Jian Wushuang said coldly. That's true. Even though I know you may have some secrets, I can't do anything to you with my strength. But don't be proud. I can't do anything to you, but my palace master has many ways to deal with you. Although you won the battle today, sooner or later my palace master will come back. We'll see if you can resist him, the Marquis of 3 said with a cold smile. His body had also floated backward. You want to leave? Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold. He did not intend to let the Marquis of 3 leave so easily. He immediately rushed toward the Marquis of 3 and pursued him. But, unfortunately, the 4 domains were still pressing on the Marquis of 3's body. He was defeated. The heavenly void world had been completely defeated, and many experts were fleeing frantically. As for the experts from the Pill Sun Sacred World was doing its best to chase after the experts from the Heavenly Void World. They wanted to retain as many experts from the Heavenly Void World as possible. This chase continued for a full 15 minutes. The Pill Sun Sacred World finally came to a halt after chasing for a very long distance. They were still on the vast ice plains. In the air, many experts from the Pill Sun Sacred World were gathered there. As for the experts from the Heavenly Void World camp, they had already left far away. As for the experts from the Pill Sun Sacred World camp, they were chasing after them. Corpses were left everywhere along the way. At this moment, these experts from the Pill Sun Sacred World were floating in the void. Yet all of them had incomparably excited expressions. We've won. We've won this battle. The Pill Sun Sacred World has defended. The many experts were incomparably excited and delighted in their hearts. At the same time that they were excited and delighted, many gazes could not help but look towards the void at the very front. It was a young man in a golden robe who held a sword in one hand. Many corpse puppets were surrounding the golden-robed young man. All the experts of the Pill Sun Sacred World looked at this person with respect and admiration. They all knew that the Pill Sun Sacred World could win this battle because of this person. Sword One, the publicly acknowledged strongest expert of the Pill Sun Sacred World. In this battle, he fought head-on with the invincible Divine Master, the Marquis of 3. They were evenly matched and even suffered a slight loss. However, this strength was once again affirmed. There was no doubt about the invincible Divine Master. Apart from his personal strength, the strength he possessed also shocked everyone. Previously they had all thought that their side would definitely lose this battle. However, in the end, this Sword One had actually brought out a powerful corpse puppet army. The corpse puppet army completely obeyed his orders because a powerful corpse puppet army had joined them. This completely changed the situation on the battlefield. The corpse puppet army was too powerful. Such a powerful force was completely controlled by Sword One alone. Everyone was full of awe toward Jian Wushuang. Even Yin Suer had a trace of awe toward Jian Wushuang. There was no other way. Jian Wushuang was too powerful now. He was stronger than everyone in the Pill Sun Sacred World, and the power in his hands was enough to sweep across the entire Pill Sun Sacred World. Although she was the Lord of Crimson Rock Castle and was in control of the Pill Sun Sacred World on the surface, she asked herself that if Jian Wushuang wanted to, he could easily take away her authority as the controller. Sword One, Yin Suer narrowed her beautiful eyes and looked at Jian Wushuang with a complicated expression. At this time, Jian Wushuang had put the corpse puppets back into his interspatial ring. After putting the entire corpse puppet army into his interspatial ring, he flashed and appeared beside Yin Suer. Lord Suer, how are our casualties? Jian Wushuang asked. More than 10 great divine masters have died, and more than 1,000 divine masters have died. However, compared to the loss of the heavenly void world, our side is perfect, Yin Suer said. She was telling the truth. The heavenly void world had suffered heavy losses in this battle. Previously, because of the appearance of the corpse puppet army, the situation had been reversed and many experts had been killed. Later, in the 15 minutes of pursuit, more experts from the Heavenly Void World camp had died. Although there were no detailed statistics, they estimated that, in this battle, more than 60 great divine masters from the Heavenly Void Realm camp had died. The Heavenly Void Army had also suffered heavy losses, and many of those great divine masters had also died. Compared to the losses of the Heavenly Void Realm camp, the experts from the Pill Sun Sacred World had indeed been very lucky. The main reason is that you brought out the Corpse Puppet Army. If it weren't for the Corpse Puppet Army, our Pill Sun Sacred World would have been in danger in this battle. Sewer sighed softly, then she asked, Mr. Sword One, how come you have such a powerful corpse puppet army? Sewer was very curious about this question. She was not the only one. Many Pil Sun Sacred World experts, including Elder Tong and Great Divine Master Ju Xuan, were also very curious. After all, there were hundreds of corpse puppets, the weakest of which was an advanced Divine Master. The corpse puppet army was enough to sweep across the entire Pil Sun Sacred World. They wanted to know how Jian Wushuang had obtained such a powerful force. Well, I can't tell you about it. Anyway, I got lucky. Jian Wushuang smiled and laughed. He was the only one who knew about the secret realm. So, naturally he could not tell others where it was. Seeing that Jian Wushuang did not want to say more, Sewer and the others did not ask further. In any case, the Pil Sun Sacred World won this battle. Sewer smiled. We've won. We've won. The people around them were also overjoyed. After a long while, Sewer said loudly, everyone clean up the battlefield carefully. After that, we'll go to Crimson Rock Castle together. I've already ordered people to prepare a banquet there. So today, our Crimson Rock Castle will celebrate with everyone here. Chapter 2832. Sewer's Ecstasy. After the battle ended, Sewer held a huge banquet in Crimson Rock Castle. The number of experts participating in the banquet was extremely large, and it was extremely lively and noisy. And the main character of this banquet, apart from Crimson Rock Castle, was naturally the Sword Alliance. In fact, during the banquet, the Sword Alliance's limelight had completely overshadowed Crimson Rock Castle. Everyone had already noticed this, but they were not surprised. This was because everyone knew that the current Pil Sun Sacred World still seemed to be under the control of Crimson Rock Castle. All the factions had already submitted to Crimson Rock Castle. But in reality, there was another faction in the Pil Sun Sacred World that was even stronger than Crimson Rock Castle. This faction was the Sword Alliance. Everyone who participated in the battle with the Heavenly Void World knew this. However, the experts of the Sacred Sundan World could not figure out what Jian Wushuang had done. After all, the Sword Alliance was now stronger than the Crimson Rock Castle. Jian Wushuang alone was enough to sweep across the entire Sacred Sundan World. Under such circumstances, the Sword Alliance could completely replace the Crimson Rock Castle and become the new ruler of the Pil Sun Sacred World. However, judging from their previous performance, the Sword Alliance did not seem to have such a plan. To be exact, it was Jian Wushuang who did not have such a plan. At the banquet, countless experts toasted Jian Wushuang, and at the same time, there were all kinds of compliments. Jian Wushuang only responded with a few words. After a day and a night, the banquet finally ended and everyone dispersed. In an exquisite attic, there were two tables facing each other. Jian Wushuang and Sewer sat there, and on the tables were wine and fruits. Besides the two of them, there was no third person in the attic, and the entire attic was covered by a restriction. Mr. Sword One, you helped me to eliminate the internal strife in Crimson Rock Castle and the threat brought by the four top forces, allowing Crimson Rock Castle to regain control of the Sacred Sundan World. This time, you helped me defeat the army of the Heavenly Void World, allowing the Sacred Sundan World and Crimson Rock Castle to be preserved. Sewer will definitely remember this great favor. Let me toast to you. Sewer raised her wine glass. Alliance Master Sewer, you are too kind. I was just entrusted by someone to be loyal to him. Jian Wushuang smiled. In St. Tomb, I promised St. Crimson Rock that I would help you solve your predicament. Naturally, I will do my best to help you. Father's vision is indeed unparalleled. At that time, I could see that you have great strength and will definitely be able to help me in the future. Sewer smiled and said, in fact, I have agreed to 2 conditions of St. Crimson Stone to help you solve the crisis that Crimson Stone Castle is facing, Jian Wushuang suddenly said. Oh, what is the other condition? Sewer asked. The other condition is that I will try my best to help you break through to the Immortal Saint Realm, Jian Wushuang said. What? Sewer was stunned for a moment, but then she smiled bitterly. Father, you think too much. It's very difficult for an immortal saint to be born in a saint world. Father was able to break through because of great opportunities and good fortune. Although I have some potential, it's not easy for me to break through to become an immortal saint. Besides, if you want to break through from a peak great divine master to an immortal saint, you have to rely on your own efforts. Mr. Sword One, although you are strong and powerful, it's difficult for you to help me. Your father asked me to try my best to think of a way for you. After all, without a real immortal saint in the vast holy world, it won't last long, Jian Wushuang said. Upon hearing this, Sewer nodded secretly. It was true that there was an immortal saint in each of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. It was because there was no immortal saint that the Pill Sun sacred world became the weakest and faced the danger of being destroyed. If there was an immortal saint, as long as the immortal saint did not die, the Pill Sun sacred world would not be so weak. The condition of St. Crimson Rock is indeed a bit harsh for me, but I still agreed to it. Moreover, I was lucky. I just got something recently that will be of great help to me in breaking through to the immortal saint realm, Jian Wushuang said. What is it? Yin Suer immediately looked over. Jian Wushuang flipped his hand, and a cyan elixir the size of an adult thumb appeared in his hand. This is... Yin Suer looked at the cyan elixir in confusion. She had seen many elixirs in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, but she did not recognize this cyan elixir. This elixir is called the Saint Opening Elixir. Have you heard of it? Jian Wushuang asked. Saint Opening Elixir? Yin Suer frowned, apparently thinking. After a while, she suddenly raised her head and looked at the cyan elixir in astonishment. Saint Ascension Elixir. Is this the legendary Saint Ascension Elixir? Yin Suer's voice became extremely excited. There was nothing she could do. This Saint Ascension Elixir was too shocking to her. It was true that she had never seen the Saint Ascension Elixir before, but she had heard of it before. It was a legendary elixir that could help those peak great divine masters who had been stuck at a bottleneck for a very long time break through to the level of the immortal saint. It was said that as long as a peak great divine master who was well prepared had a little bit of potential, the chances of breaking through to the level of the immortal saint after consuming this Saint Ascension Elixir would be 30%. A 30% chance of breaking through was enough to drive any great divine master, including those invincible divine masters who stood at the top, crazy. Unfortunately, the level of this Saint Ascension Elixir was too high, and it was too difficult to refine it. At the very least, no one in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow could refine such an elixir. Not to mention the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, even in the surrounding areas of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, there was probably no one who could refine such an elixir. Those who were qualified to refine the Saint Ascension Elixir were definitely top-grade alchemists. Alchemists of that level could only be found in the core 3rd heaven of the absolute beginning divine realm. As for those outside the 3rd heaven, they were almost impossible to find. Therefore, the Saint Ascension Elixir was definitely legendary outside the 3rd heaven. It was extremely difficult to see one on a normal day. Even in the 3rd heaven, the Saint Ascension Elixir was also very difficult to obtain. But now, Jian Wushuang actually took out a Saint Ascension Elixir and placed it in front of her. Mr. Sword One, is this really the Saint Ascension Elixir? Yin Suer's voice was trembling. It's the real one. Jian Wushuang smiled. In fact, he did not know the Saint Ascension Elixir before, but since it came from Elder Gu in the secret realm, it must be true. Chapter 2833. Sword League's position. Looking at the Saint Ascension Elixir in front of her, Yin Suer's eyes immediately became extremely hot. I promised St. Crimson Rock that I would try my best to help you break through, and this Saint Ascension Elixir is the limit of what I can do. As for whether you can really break through to the immortal saint realm after obtaining the Saint Ascension Elixir, it depends on your own luck and luck. It has nothing to do with me, Jian Wushuang said, then he waved his hand and threw the elixir to Yin Suer. Yin Suer took the elixir, but her mind was in a daze. Mr. Sword One, are you sure you want to give this elixir to me? Yin Suer was in disbelief. The Saint Ascension Elixir was such a precious treasure. She believed that if the news of the Saint Ascension Elixir spread, the entire Golden Crow 9 realms would be shocked. Countless top-tier great divine masters, including a few invincible divine masters, would immediately rush to Pill Sun's sacred world to fight for it. The elixir was of great use to the great divine master. But Jian Wushuang gave such a precious elixir to her? After all, Jian Wushuang was only a great divine master now. He would try to break through to the immortal saint realm sooner or later. The elixir would be of great use to him, right? Mr. Sword One, don't you need the Saint Ascension Elixir in the future? Yin Suer could not help asking. My situation is a bit special, so the elixir won't help me much. Besides, if I meet the requirements to become an immortal saint, I can easily make a breakthrough even without the elixir, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. What he said was the truth. His potential was too great, far beyond Yin Suer's imagination. Previously, he had relied on the elixir and primordial stone to improve his realm. As long as he had enough divine power, he could easily make a breakthrough without any obstacles. The reason why he could do this was that he had too much potential. As long as he met the conditions, he could easily break through his level. If it were other experts, even if all the conditions had been met, there would still be some twists and turns in breaking through. Some might even encounter bottlenecks, but Jian Wushuang did not. He did not know how to break through from the Divine Master level to the Immortal Saint level, nor did he know how to break through from the Great Divine Master level to the Immortal Saint level. In addition to the uniqueness of the perfect chaotic creature, he really did not need it. In that case he'll take it. Thank you, Mr. Sword One, Yin Suer said gratefully. You're welcome. After all, your father, St. Crimson Rock, has already paid you. Jian Wushuang smiled and said, Oh, there's one more thing I need to tell you. What is it? Yin Suer asked. You're the ruler of Crimson Rock Castle. You should be more aware of the situation in the Pil Sun Sacred World than I am. Although Crimson Rock Castle has regained control of the Pil Sun Sacred World, there is still a special existence in the Pil Sun Sacred World, which is the Sword Alliance, Jian Wushuang said. Hearing this, Yin Suer's expression changed slightly. She already knew what Jian Wushuang wanted to say. That was the position of the Sword Alliance. The Sword Alliance had been an ally of Crimson Rock Castle until now. It could even be said that Crimson Rock Castle had relied on something to a great extent. By relying on Jian Wushuang, the prestige of the Sword Alliance had surpassed that of Crimson Rock Castle to a certain extent. Especially in the battle with the Heavenly Void World, it was Jian Wushuang who had turned the tables. Moreover, Jian Wushuang's personal strength and the strength of the corpse puppet army under his control had been proven. As for the position of the Sword Alliance, which controlled such a powerful force in the Pil Sun Sacred World, was it to stand on equal footing with Crimson Rock Castle and share the Pil Sun Sacred World, or would the Sword Alliance be willing to live under Crimson Rock Castle, or, it was possible for Jian Wushuang to directly step forward and replace the Crimson Rock Castle. It could be said that the current situation of the Pil Sun Sacred World and the survival of the Crimson Rock Castle were actually in Jian Wushuang's hands. It was up to him to decide. Yin Suer also knew this, so she had always been very humble to Jian Wushuang and never took the initiative to expose this matter. After all, the Red Stone Castle was in a weak position, and once it was exposed, the risks it had to take. Yin Suer could not afford it. But now Jian Wushuang took the initiative to talk about this matter. The Sword Alliance is too special in the Pil Sun Sacred World. Many forces and countless experts are watching our Sword Alliance. Although I have restricted the experts under the Sword Alliance so that they cannot expand, there is no room for two tigers on a mountain. If this continues, there will be trouble sooner or later. I believe that the experts in your Crimson Rock Castle are also wary of our Sword Alliance, right? Jian Wushuang said. Yes, there is. Yin Suer nodded slightly. There are a few experts in Crimson Rock Castle who have warned me about the Sword Alliance many times. They even suggested sending some experts to infiltrate the Sword Alliance. However, I rejected them. I completely believe in you, Mr. Sword One. Completely? Jian Wushuang looked at Yin Suer with interest and then smiled. Well, actually, I'm not interested in creating a powerful force in the Pil Sun Sacred World or the Nine Realms Golden Crow Worlds. My ambition is far beyond the Nine Realms Golden Crow Worlds. As soon as I'm strong enough, I'll leave here and go to a more vast place. As for the Sword Alliance, I created it to help you as much as possible. I had good intentions, but I didn't expect that the situation would stabilize and become a threat to Crimson Rock Castle. Now, many people in the Sword Alliance also want to destroy Crimson Rock Castle and replace it. Yin Suer was shocked. Don't worry, I've suppressed these people for the time being. As long as I stay in the Golden Crow Nine Realms, no one in the Sword Alliance will dare to disobey my orders. But if I leave the Golden Crow Nine Realms and go somewhere else, it might not be the case, Jian Wushuang said with a faint smile. So, I need you to give me some time. Time? Yin Suer was puzzled. I need some time, but I don't know how long it will take. At least a few decades, at most 100 years. I will continue to stay in the Golden Crow Nine Realms for these years, and I will find a new territory for the Sword Alliance. By that time, the Sword Alliance will go to that territory, and naturally, there will be no friction with Crimson Rock Castle. Jian Wushuang smiled. But are the experts of the Sword Alliance willing to go there? Yin Suer asked with a frown. If it's the same size, most of the experts of the Sword Alliance wouldn't want to go there. But what if it's very big? Jian Wushuang said with a strange smile. Chapter 2834, 300,000 inch a very big territory? How big is it? Yin Suer asked. A world, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. Yin Suer was stunned and said in surprise, Mr. Sword One, do you mean to lead the Sword Union to attack a world? Yes, I do, but I don't know if it can be realized, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. Knowing what Jian Wushuang was thinking, Yin Suer could not help but sigh in her heart. There were 9 realms in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. In addition to the Pill Sun's sacred world, the other 8 realms had the immortal saint personally overseeing them. Their overall strength was also very strong. Although the Sword Alliance now had the ability to wipe out the entire Pill Sun sacred world, it was just an extravagant hope to attack other realms, right? However, Yin Suer had witnessed Jian Wushuang's growth. She had seen him rise from a peak great divine master to the strongest expert in the Pill Sun sacred world, and he had the terrifying power to wipe out the entire Pill Sun sacred world. It had only taken him less than 100 years. It was incredible. He had achieved this in less than 100 years. If he was given another 100 years, he might still have the ability to conquer the next realm. Let's not talk about this for now. Jian Wushuang waved his hand. Castle Lord Suer, I once asked you to sell the Blood Wilderness Emperor Essence, which weighed 230 kilograms. I heard from Palace Master Si Zhen that you sold it to Lord Mo, who is said to be the #1 blacksmith in the Golden Crow 9 realms. Yes. Yin Suer nodded. It's true that Master Mo is the #1 blacksmith in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. His refining level is at least at the top of the 7th grade. No one in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow can compare to him, and he has a good reputation. When I sold the Blood Wilderness Emperor Essence to him, I sold it at a very good price, which made me a big profit. In that case, you must know how to contact Master Mo. Can you contact him for me? Jian Wushuang asked. What? Does Mr. Sword One need Lord Mo for something? Yin Suer looked at him. To tell you the truth, it's my magic weapon. I need Lord Mo to help me refine it again, Jian Wushuang said. Naturally, he was looking for Lord Mo for the Blood Mountain Sword. The Blood Mountain Sword was his natal magic weapon. As his strength increased, the power of the Blood Mountain Sword also increased. However, the Blood Mountain Sword was given to him by his master Xian. When it was forged, it did not contain the blood essence of his perfect chaotic life form, so the huge potential hidden in the Blood Mountain Sword had not been fully unleashed yet. Back in the Sorcerer Desert region, he had asked that 4th grade blacksmith Master Kuan to help him forge the golden armor, but it was a pity that Master Kuan did not have the ability to reforge the Blood Mountain Sword. Moreover, he had told him at the time that he had to be at least a 7th grade blacksmith. Only then did he have the qualification to refine the Blood Mountain Sword again. He had been paying attention to Master Mo ever since he had heard about him from Palace Master Si Zhen. Now there was no conflict within the Pill Sun sacred world. As for the Heavenly Void world, because of some restrictions in the Golden Crow 9 worlds, the Heavenly Void Palace Master could not personally come to the Pill Sun sacred world. After the defeat of the army he had sent, it would not be easy to stop the Second War. In other words, the Pill Sun sacred world had basically settled down, and Jian Wushuang's strength was enough to travel in the Golden Crow 9 worlds. Naturally, he wanted to look for Lord Mo and ask him to help him refine the Blood Mountain Sword again. Look for Lord Mo to refine a magic weapon? Yin Suer frowned slightly. Mr. Sword One, you don't know this. Although Lord Mo has a good reputation, he is an extremely arrogant person. His identity is also very honorable. Not only is he the #1 artifact master in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, but he is also an extremely powerful immortal saint. Because of this, it is very difficult to see him on a daily basis. There are many powerful great divine masters in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. It is said that there are even immortal saints who go to visit him. However, most of them will not see him unless it is something that benefits them greatly. For example, someone paid a great price to ask him to refine a holy treasure or some treasures that interested him. Last time, when I went to visit him with the Blood Wilderness Emperor Essence, although I sold it to him, Lord Mo never came to see me. You didn't see Lord Mo last time? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Yes. Yin Suer smiled bitterly. It's so difficult just to see him. As for asking him to help you refine the divine weapon again, it's even more difficult and the price to pay is ridiculously high. How much? Jian Wushuang asked. Under normal circumstances, this Lord Mo can help you refine 300,000 Saint Elixirs once, Yin Suer said. 300,000 Saint Elixirs? Jian Wushuang could not help but be shocked. 300,000 Saint Elixirs were too much. After all, they had defeated the 4 top forces last time. They had only obtained 200,000 Saint Elixirs from the 4 top forces and the experts he had killed. This was almost 70% of the resources of the 4 top forces. But now, Lord Mo needed 300,000 sacred elixirs just to refine it once? That's not right. Even a ready-made holy treasure magic weapon doesn't need 100,000 sacred elixirs. He asked for 300,000 right away. Who would ask him to refine a holy treasure? Jian Wushuang asked. No, Mr. Sword One, I'm afraid you're mistaken. Sewer shook her head and said, the holy treasure saber you gave me last time is indeed of low value and not worth 100,000 sacred treasures. But this holy treasure saber is completely different from the holy treasure that Lord Mo refined personally. The holy treasure saber refined by Lord Mo is a natal magic weapon. It can be connected to the essence blood of the immortal saint and continuously grow. The value of such a natal magic weapon at the level of a holy treasure is far beyond that of an ordinary holy treasure. Natal magic weapon? Jianghu suddenly understood. If Lord Mo had refined a natal magic weapon at the level of a holy treasure, then it was indeed worth the price. Because a life-bound divine weapon at the level of a holy treasure was definitely worth more than 1,000,000 holy elixirs or even more. Unfortunately, the life-bound divine weapon was only effective on the master who was connected to him by blood and sweat. But if it fell into the hands of others, it would only be an ordinary holy treasure divine weapon. 300,000 holy elixirs is not a small amount. I can't afford so many holy elixirs now. However, even if I take out the existing sacred elixirs, I should still have treasures of equal value. Jianghu secretly smiled. Chapter 28:35. One Emperor 4 Pavilions. Jianghu had a lot of treasures on hand that were worth 300,000 saint elixirs. Of course, there were also treasures that were worth 300,000 saint elixirs. For example, the mountain and river map, blood mountain sword, and seal the heaven scroll were all worth more than 300,000 saint elixirs. However, these treasures were all very useful to Jianghu. Besides these treasures, the only treasure that Jianghu could take out that was worth 300,000 saint elixirs was the last piece of Blood Wilderness Emperor crystal. In the Blood Wilderness concentrate, Jianghu had obtained 3 pieces of Blood Wilderness Emperor crystal. He had already used the 2 small pieces. The second piece of Blood Wilderness Emperor crystal was sold to Lord Mo by Sewer at a very high price. Jianghu had also divided 10,000 saint elixirs. But in fact, Sewer had actually sold it for more than 10,000 saint elixirs. The Blood Wilderness Emperor crystal that Sewer had sold was only 230 kilograms, but the last piece of Blood Wilderness Emperor crystal in his interspatial ring weighed more than 10,000 kilograms. A Blood Wilderness Emperor crystal that weighed more than 10,000 kilograms was worth at least 600,000 to 700,000 sacred elixirs. Moreover, Lord Mo was a weaponsmith, and he needed rare materials like the Blood Wilderness Emperor crystal. If he brought this Blood Wilderness Emperor crystal to see Lord Mo and asked Lord Mo to listen to him reforge the Blood Mountain sword, Lord Mo might agree. Mr. Sword 1 Lord Mo is of high status. Even I don't have his direct contact. I can only contact his personal disciple. How about I ask him for you now? Sewer said. No need. Just tell me where he is. I'll go and find him myself, Jianghu said with a smile. Okay. Sewer nodded. It's not a secret where Lord Mo lives. Many people in the 9 realms know that he lives in the Dragon Phoenix Sacred City, one of the 4 holy cities. Dragon Phoenix Sacred City? Jianghu heart skipped a beat. Why does the Dragon Phoenix Sacred City sound like it has something to do with the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion? Of course it has something to do with it. The headquarters of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion is in the Dragon Phoenix Sacred City, and the Dragon Phoenix Sacred City is completely under the control of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, Sewer said with a smile. Is that so? Jianghu raised his eyebrows, then he said, Castle Lord Sewer, I've been wandering in the Pill Sun sacred world, so I don't know much about the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. As for the 4 holy cities you mentioned, I've never heard of them before. Can you tell me about them? Of course, Sewer immediately said, Mr. Sword 1, you should know that the 9 realms of the Golden Crow is actually made up of 9 realms. Compared to the entire absolute beginning divine realm, the 9 realms of the Golden Crow is nothing. Just in the endless territories beyond the 3rd firmament, places like the 9 realms of the Golden Crow are countless. And the 9 realms of the Golden Crow before this, every realm had a world overlord who controlled everything. This world overlord was always held by the undying sage. For example, the previous world overlord of the sacred realm of the Pill Sun was my father. But after my father died, the sacred realm of the Pill Sun no longer had a world overlord. It became the only realm in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow without the undying sage. In fact, since the immortal saint is no longer in charge of the Pill Sun sacred world, we don't have the right to occupy such a large territory. The other major realms can totally divide up the territory of the Pill Sun sacred world. The reason why this didn't happen is that the 9 realms of the Golden Crow had made an agreement a long time ago. What agreement? Jianghu looked at her. This agreement was decided by many world masters of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow and the top forces, Sewer said in a deep voice. Mr. Sword One, first of all, you should know the overall structure of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. The 9 realms of the Golden Crow has always been divided into 1 emperor for pavilions and 8 great worlds. The 8 great worlds here refer to 8 of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. The 4 pavilions are the 4 super forces that live in different realms but do not expand their territory. They are the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, the Star Pointing Pavilion, the Thundercloud Pavilion, and the Celestial Pavilion. Their overall strength and heritage are far above that of the other realms. Although they do not compete for hegemony, they have created a sacred city with great means. These 4 holy cities are the most prosperous places in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang's pupils contracted. He had heard of the 4 pavilions, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and the Star Pavilion. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion was the recognized genius concentration camp in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. Those who could enter the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion were all dragons and phoenixes among men. The Star Pavilion was the #1 chamber of commerce in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. Its power covered all the realms of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. For example, there were many branches of the Star Pavilion in the Pil Sun Sacred World. He knew about both of them, but it was his first time hearing about the Thundercloud Pavilion and the Celestial Immortal Pavilion. However, the Thundercloud Pavilion and the Celestial Immortal Pavilion were not weak since they were named after the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and the Point Star Pavilion. Now that there are 4 pavilions, what does 1 emperor mean? Jian Wushuang asked. 1 emperor means the true overlord of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, the Bone Emperor realm. Sewer said. Bone Emperor realm? A realm? Jian Wushuang was stunned. That's right. There are 9 realms in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, but there are only 8 of them. The last one is the Bone Emperor realm, Sewer said solemnly. Although the Bone Emperor realm is also a realm, its territory is larger than the other 8 realms combined. The realm master of the Bone Emperor realm, Bone Emperor, is recognized as the #1 expert in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. Jian Wushuang was shocked. They were both in the same realm, but the territory of the Bone Emperor realm was comparable to the other 8 realms combined? How strong is the Bone Emperor, the #1 expert in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow? Jian Wushuang asked. I don't know exactly how strong he is, but he is definitely a very strong immortal saint. There have been rumors that when he rose to power, he killed several immortal saints in one go, which made him famous. After he established the Bone Emperor realm and became the emperor of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, he rarely made a move. But every time he made a move, it was earth-shaking. All the immortal saints in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow respected him. For example, the world overlords of the 8 realms and the undying saints of the 4 pavilions are all in awe of this Bone Emperor. As for that agreement, it was actually proposed by this Bone Emperor. Because the 8 realms have always been dependent on the Bone Emperor realm, this Bone Emperor proposed this agreement to maintain the balance of the 8 realms. Sewer said. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.